Hi everyone. Guys, can you see my screen and can you hear me clearly? You can write down in the chat window if you can see my screen and if you can hear me clearly. Yes, a lot of people saying yes. Guys, if you're raising hands, don't raise the hand in the chat panel. Just write down yes if you're able to see my screen. Okay, all right. Yes, I see a lot of yes people saying yes now. So let's get started. Guys, I welcome you all on behalf of Edureka. Welcome to this course on the AZ300, the Azure Solution Architect course. And Edureka is, one of the fastest growing online learning community. And so I'm really happy to have you in the batch. And so let's get started. Okay. All right. So before we begin, something about me. Of course, you would want to know that, what's my background and what are we going to do today is okay. So my name is Mohit Batra and I have around 14 years of experience, 3+ years on the Azure stack, whatever is written there. I am also, I have architected large scale high performing systems before on Azure as well, uh, on Azure and without Azure as well, on-prem systems. And I've also been involved into building data warehousing, BI, big data solutions on a lot of different technologies. I started with my BI background, then I went into the big data as well. So alongside, I've been, moved into the architect role and built the performance, a lot of applications as well. So some of the certifications, I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I'm in fact, I've also done my Azure Solution Architect Expert certification. One of them is AZ300, the other one is AZ301. So we are here together to look into, or in fact, go through AZ300. That's one of the that's one of the certifications I've also done. Then I've also done 70776, that is aligned more towards the data role, which is performing big data engineering on the cloud. And if some of you might be knowing about it, Agile. So I'm Agile certified. In fact, I expect a lot of people to know about it. So I'm Agile certified. I'm also Safe certified. I have around 3+ years experience into training, both online and offline. And with Edureka, this is I don't remember, but it's I've done good number of batches with Edureka. So now you are the newest one, and I'm also a Pluralsight author. So one of my courses is very shortly going to come up on Pluralsight. So you'll have to wait for it if that gets published while during this course. So I'm going to share the link as well. So that's all about me, and let's see the people who have joined today. I've actually got a big list with me. I think some of the people have not joined. In fact, people are continuously joining in between. So there are lots of people with lots of different backgrounds. We have got uh, people with more than 15 years of experience: Mujib, Shri, Maria, Ravindra, Ishwar, Prakash, uh, Murli Rajan, Roshan. So guys, I welcome you. Are you have got lots of experience, and we expect to learn from you as well. So along with whatever you'll take from the course, we are also expecting that you'll also share things with us. If I'm not speaking something right, I expect you to also jump in. Or if something, I keep sharing these things that if I don't know something, so you are more than welcome to jump in and share your experience. I can share that with the whole class. So welcome you all. Some of these people are joining from database background. One is an ETL consultant. Some are from project management background. Some are into development, tech leads. So welcome all you guys. And Ashish is saying I'm not audible. Guys, am I audible to everyone? Just cross checking. Just want to make sure that. Okay. I think he's the one he's not able to hear. Uh, Let me just put in the comment. Okay, and apart from that, there are guys who have just started their careers. Uh, Sahith, Benedict, and there is one Edureka guest. Okay, but I hope you'll get your name corrected. So you have just started your career, so welcome. You have really taken a good step. Now, cloud is it's no more a buzzword. It's a way of life now. In software, cloud, a lot of people are moving towards cloud, so it's a good step that you have taken. So welcome. And then we have guys with 10 to 15 years of experience. That's like my my range, my experience range. So welcome you guys. We have Saish, Abhijit, Amlan, Anudeep, Sagar, Mahesh, Amaya, Sayed, Rajesh, Ashish, Vijayvardhan, Ankush, Gopal, Ketan, Shankar. So, and we have Prabhakar and Narendra. So, guys, welcome to you as well. So, we are all of the same range. I hope we can all learn from each other. Okay. And then we have guys with 2 to 7 years of experience: Preetham, Narendra, Kabde, Enibida, Pratnana, Narayanan, Prem, Gautam. So, guys, welcome you all. Some of you are, there is one student as well. So, welcome out of this range. That's a good. So, that's a good thing that you guys are moving into the cloud sooner into your career. And then we have guys with 7 to 10 years of experience: Parth, Rajbabu, Aziz, Jeevan, Krishna, Sohail, Prashant, Vaishnavi, Sippy and Juma. Okay, so Sippy and Juma, I don't have much information about you, but if you can share more, that would be great. So that's all we have in the class. I see, I think a few guys have not joined yet, but maybe they'll join during the course. Again, welcome. You are guys are coming from a lot of different countries: India, US, UK, Singapore, Australia, Germany, uh, UAE, Malaysia. Okay. So good number of people joining from a lot of different countries with different backgrounds in hardware, in administration, in services, in development, uh, consulting, BPO services. So you can see here we have got a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds. So it's a diverse class, and that's what we have to be careful about. We have to make sure that everybody learns along with us. Okay. All right, so that's all about the introductory part. Let's go ahead and see what we have uh, for today. Go to webinar tool. I think a lot of people, a lot of you people are already aware because you are saying yes and no in the panel. If anybody who is not aware, so you can go ahead and put everything in the chat window. uh, we'll keep discussing your questions. uh, Normally we used to use the raise hand button, but because we have a big class, so I would say that don't use the raise hand button, because it would get really difficult for me to track who has raised hand or not. But if you are facing any challenges with your webinar, please drop out, leave the webinar, clear your browser cache, and join back again. So a lot of people do face problem with the audio and video sometimes. You can leave the webinar, clear the cache, and join back again. I think that should solve the problem. Okay. All right, so before we go forward, some housekeeping questions. I know you guys will have lots of questions. Before even we joined in, a couple of guys asked me some questions. So I know that you will have questions. So I would say that just hold on to your questions. Sometimes I would go ahead and answer your question right away. If I'm not able to do it, I'll answer it maybe in a few minutes later. Some questions could go at the end, or if I'm not able to answer, or if you have questions after the class, you can go ahead and drop an email to me, or maybe come back in the next class with your questions. We can discuss that. Okay, I'm not shy of giving more time after the class to the participants. If you have anything to discuss, feel free to do that. Okay, but during the class I will try to answer most of the questions, but if something is left, I would urge you to hold on to that. Okay, but just I can assure you that after the end of this course, there would be not be a single question that will be left behind. Okay. Bhavani is saying you haven't mentioned my name. So Bhavani, I think your name is mentioned as Edureka guest. So that's why probably I could not mention your name. So welcome to you as well. Guys, anybody who is left, so I welcome you all. I may not have your complete names if someone is missing, but I welcome if there is anyone left. Okay, now apart from that, we'll try and take two breaks. Now, normally I take two breaks of 5 minutes each after every hour, so that we can just refresh back and join the class again. Okay. Another important point: heterogeneity. You have already the main reason for me mentioning all of your names is that you understand that there are lots of people with lots of different backgrounds. Some of you might be completely new to cloud. Some of you might already have some heads up. Some of you might be joining from AWS background as well. So there is a lot of heterogeneity in the class, but still we have to make sure that everybody goes together. It's not about it's we don't want to make sure that some people get left behind, or some people are just hijacking the class. I don't want to use that word, but some people do that. So just want to make sure that we all work together throughout the course of the throughout this whole course. That is why feel free to ask any question. If you are totally new to cloud, if you have any question, feel free to ask it. There is no question called silly question. Feel free, go ahead, and I'm going to answer that. Okay, because it is once you'll ask your question, you may not know that the other person knows the answer or not. So whatever you'll ask, I'm going to share it. I'm going to answer that so everybody can learn from each other. Last thing is we have to respect everybody's time. A lot of people would want to leave after 3 hours. Some of you, I'm going to request you to stay back for 10-15 minutes. I hope that should be okay. Because if I have to complete a topic, I'll request you to stay back, but otherwise I might have to ask you to stop the questions because we have to complete the course as well. So let's respect everybody's time. Let's understand that it's a big class and everybody is from different backgrounds, but feel free to ask any questions so that we can learn from each other. Okay. Okay, so I see that one person is saying, are we going to ask the question only through chat? Yes, you are. We are only going to ask from chat. If I'm going to unmute you, it would be a bit difficult. At the end of class, if you have some specific query which I'm not able to answer, just let me know. I can unmute you. You can ask your questions. But this is not going to be a regular thing. That should be very occasional. So Dinesh, it was your question. So your name is mentioned again as Edureka guest. Please go ahead, and if you can correct it, it would be great. uh, Vijay Vardhan is saying, what are the break times? So Vijay Vardhan, as soon as we finish a topic, normally it's after 1 hour, but as soon as we finish a topic, maybe 1 hour, 10 minutes or 55 minutes, we'll take a break. Okay. All right. So let me introduce you to the course. I know a lot of you already know about it because you have signed up for it, but still, it's going to run from 29th June to 28th July, Saturday, Sunday, 8:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. IST. Probably just check your local times. I think you already know because you have joined, but important point is it's not going to be a 30-hour course. Let me tell you very straightforward, because you have to slog with me for the next 5 weeks. Because if you'll just come here, listen to what we are discussing, and if you go back, I am afraid that's not going to help. So we have to go, and as soon as we do a topic, I would urge you go back and practice. If you'll not do it, if you'll not slog it out for the 5 weeks, it would be a bit difficult to clear the certification course. And also it would be, people tend to forget as well. So it's, please go ahead and practice whatever we are discussing so that you can understand the concepts that we are doing in the class. Okay. Another important point, you'll get the multiple choice questions at the end of the course. You will also get an assignment and in fact a case study that you'll have to finish to get your Edureka certificate. Okay, so that's all you'll need to do. The other important point is it is an intermediate to advanced level course. Now, remember that some of you are totally new. That's okay. For the first class, that's very much okay because I'm going to start with the very basics. In all the classes, I'm going to start with the basics, but if you are very new and if you'll not come back prepared, it would be a bit difficult for you. So I would suggest you that first class, it's okay. From the next class, uh, just start preparing yourself for the coming session. Or even if you're not, I'm going to start with the basic. After that, please go ahead and practice. That's very, very important. Okay. The other part, or what are the key takeaways? I think a lot of you know about it. It's geared towards AZ300 exam. Remember, this is one of the toughest exams that Microsoft Azure has. It's an architect certification. It's not, it's not it's not going to be a simple exam. It covers a whole array of topics. It's going to cover, starting from development, deployment, configurations, security, uh, scalability, high availability. All these things are going to come up in the exam. So you have to, and it's going to be across all the services. So just make sure that you go ahead and practice again. Then we'll look into the deployment and configuration. As I said, you look into the high availability, scalability, and all those aspects of applications. We are going to create the applications. We are going to deploy the applications. Remember, this is not going to be focused towards development. This is more about from architect perspective, not from development perspective. So I'm going to show you very small glimpses of code, very less, so that we'll just see that this is something, this code piece, I'm going to deploy that. So only in couple of cases where we have to do things like Azure functions and all that, I'm going to show you more code, but otherwise this is not oriented towards code. This is more oriented towards learning the technologies, learning the architecture. Okay, and then we'll see into implementing the workloads and security, and finally the important piece, the data storage and security, very very important. Okay, so that's all we have in the course structure. Now before we go ahead, again, there are a few prerequisites that you need to know. Let me see, I think a couple of few people are asking some questions. Just hold on for a second, let me see. I think uh, okay, Natraj is saying, are you able to see my chat? Yes, Natraj, I'm able to see that. And Saish is saying some disturbance is coming from your voice. Now he's able to hear it clearly. Uh, okay. And okay, Nataraj is saying I don't see anyone's question. So guys, your questions will only be visible to me, not to anyone else. So whatever you will post, that I'll see that. I am going to answer that question. So nobody else is going to see that. Okay. And Vijay is saying, do you cover all prerequisites? So Vijay, that's in front of you. I'm going to talk about it. And Sesh is saying AZ301 and AZ. So he's saying AZ300 and 301 are the same. No, Sesh, it's totally two different exams. AZ300 is geared towards technologies. AZ301 is geared towards from the architecture perspective. But then uh, together, once you do both of them, then only you're going to get your architect certification. Okay. And Sohail is saying, will you be covering DevOps practice as well? Sohail, very less. I'm during the class. I mean, during a particular topic, I can just talk about it, but Azure DevOps is a separate topic. No. Okay. And I think that's one person is asking about what is the difference between AZ203 and AZ300. Uh, I'm not aware of what is AZ203. Maybe I'll just have a look at the course, but AZ300 is geared towards technologies. Okay. Prashant is saying you mentioned that you expect us to know Agile. No, Prashant, you don't need to know Agile. Only I am Agile certified. I thought that most of the people know about what is Agile. If you don't know, there is no prerequisite. We are not going to talk about Agile at all. Okay. And Rajesh is saying, is it possible to have a high level discussion on DevOps strategy and planning? Rajesh, not during the course, maybe after that. Okay. All right. So as far as prerequisites are concerned, so if you're not aware of Azure, that's okay for the first class. But I hope that after this first class, you'll have a good understanding of that. Apart from that, if you guys are new, go ahead and sign up for the Azure subscription. That is very, very important for all the practice. You need the Azure subscription. At the end of the class, I'll show you, guys who are not aware, I'll show you how to sign up for one. You'll get a $200 free, free subscription, and that you can use for 1 month. So you definitely need to have an Azure subscription for practicing it. Plus, explore the Edureka LMS, very important, because there you will get all the presentations, all the tutorials. Also, you will get the recordings of the day. Maybe after 3 or 4 hours, you'll get the recording uploaded into the Edureka LMS. So please go ahead and explore that. If you have any doubts, you can contact me, or you can contact support. And if you have facing any challenge, have any questions, raise a ticket with them, or you can contact them at ops@edureka.co. Along with that, if you have any technical challenges, which means not challenges, but if you have any questions on what we do in the class, I'm going to share my email ID with you. You can drop me an email, and people who have been there in my classes know that I always respond back. Maybe 2 3 days later, but I do that on a regular basis. Okay. Along with that, whatever we'll do in the class, I'm going to share all of them, all of that with you in the common folder. You can download that and practice on your own. Okay. All right, let's see. Now, some of the action items are there for you. I know, guys, this is the first class. I just want to make sure that we clear up all these things in the beginning, what we are going to do, what is expected out of me, what is expected out of you, so that, we can focus in the remaining classes. Even in today's class, we'll just start in maybe 10 more minutes. We'll see that what are the prerequisite things that we need to take care of. Then we'll start with today's topic. Okay. Now, important action items for you, feedback, very important. Feel free to drop feedback on the Edureka site. But if you have any feedback that you want me to improve on right away in the classes, just drop me an email. I'm more than happy to receive that. Okay. I'll tell you the location where you can provide the feedback. Along with that, please dedicate time during the week and practice. You'll get your MCQ and certification project at the end, which you have to wrap up to get your certificate. And before you come for the next class, prepare the queries, do some groundwork on the topic, and please join the class on time. It's a big class, so very important, because I have seen in my classes a lot of people join after 5 minutes late, and then they come lose the context a bit, so I'll have to repeat it. Okay, so maybe because of the big class, I might not be able to repeat everything. So if you can join on class on time, it would be really great for all of us. Okay, and during the class, please focus. Repeating the stuff may be a bit difficult, but I'll try to cover as much as possible. Okay, all right, now let's come to what we are going to do in the course. Number one, we are going to look into how to manage the resources. So what we mean by resources, so whatever we are going to create in Azure, let's say we create a storage account, we create a virtual machine, all these things we'll see how we can create, how we can manage all of them, how we can automate all that stuff, and how to have subscriptions, and how to have the ARM templates. I'm going to show you a lot of ways in which you can do the deployments in the very first class. Now, you might ask me that why in the first class we are talking about deployment, because it's not just about deployment, it is about creating the resources in Azure. Okay, so I'm going to show you what are the best ways of creating the resources, modifying those resources, handling those resources. Okay, now the next class is going to be about networking. So we are going to see a lot of small components which are there in Azure, which are going to be so if you have to deploy a single virtual machine, there are lots of small things that you need to take care of. So that we are going to talk about: virtual machines, virtual networks, network security groups, network interface cards, IP addresses, subnets, and all that. We are going to talk about all the networking components in tomorrow's class. Okay, then we'll talk about next week about the infrastructure services, which means if you have to make your VMs highly available and scalable, what are the different services which are available in Azure. Now, for some of you, it might be totally new, all these topics that are written in orange, but still you need, just to share that what we are going to do. So we are going to talk about all these things, which includes a load balancer as well. So if you are making your applications highly scalable and available, what are the different infrastructure services which are available in Azure? The next class we'll talk about PaaS offerings, which means if you simply want to go ahead and deploy some applications in Azure, your web application, your APIs, and some functions in Azure, you can go ahead and use the PaaS services, and that's what we are going to look into. Okay, along with that, we'll talk about some very interesting features in Azure, like the logic apps and the Azure functions. So you will see that that can make your life really easy. Okay, next class we'll talk about the advanced and hybrid networking. So I'm going to show you how you can set up virtual networks, how you can set up the hybrid connectivity, which means how you can connect your own virtual networks and your corporate or the on-prem virtual networks with each other. Okay, so we'll see how you can make connectivity between them, how you can do site recovery and all that stuff we are going to cover in number 5. Okay, number 6 is about data services. So saw that there were a lot of people coming from data background. So we'll talk about the Azure SQL and what are the different options available. We'll talk about data lake, and some people, maybe doing some NoSQL stuff, but we are going to talk about the basics of Cosmos DB. Very interesting service and very important as well. Okay, and then we'll talk about the managed server application. So it's a really interesting topic: Docker, containers, Azure Kubernetes services. Now, some of you might be very new to this, but I can assure you that this is one of the most interesting topics that people go through. Okay, then we'll talk about the data security. We'll see how you can secure your applications using role-based access control, Azure Active Directory, Key Vault, managed service identity, encryption, and all that. Okay, number 9 is about messaging services. So we'll talk about what is the importance of messaging, how you can set up the messaging infrastructure, how you can set up the queues, how you can use service bus, event hubs. Along with that, we'll see how they all can work together. Okay, so during all these classes, it is going to be more focused towards demos, because remember, in your certification exam, it's no longer about multiple choice questions, it's also about labs. They will ask you to go ahead and create things in Azure. So that is why it is going to be important for you to see how we are practically doing all these things. Okay, One person is saying my voice is breaking. Is guys just cross checking again? This is the first class, so is everybody fine? Can hear me clearly? Yes, they can. Uh, okay, I think Guy, if anybody is having problem, I think my network is all fine. Maybe on your side, you'll just need to make sure that your network is good. Okay, and Natraj is saying we'll also clear queries if I'm creating a product mounting on Azure for practice purpose. Yes, Natraj, if you are working on something and if you have any doubts, you feel free to drop me an email, or maybe at the end of the class I can help you. If you have some specific queries. Okay, and last topic that we are going to do is about monitoring and automation. Actually, it's only monitoring. Automation is not a part of it. So we are going to look into how you can monitor all your applications. Okay. And Aziz is saying, will you teach containers in regards to DevOps? Aziz, not in regarding to DevOps, but we'll talk about containers and Kubernetes. Okay. And Roshan is saying, is there any place where I can see sample labs, which is asked in AZ 300? So Roshan, I'll share some. So there are no free dumps available, or maybe you can download that. But if you only want, for example, some specific, so after we are done with the topic, and if you want to do some labs, I'm going to give you some pointers which you can do that. Okay, so that's what I can share with you. All right, so Rajesh is saying I didn't see your mail ID. Rajesh, I'm going to share that at the end. Okay, all right, so that's all we have in the course structure. Now let's come to the main thing, which is Azure. Okay, so some of you are coming from Azure background, some of you may not be, but let me tell you some very basics about Azure. It's a cloud computing platform. It is available, it has got more than 100 services. I think approximately 150 now. Now, what is a service? If you want to create a VM, that's a service. If you want to create a storage account, that's a service. If you want to create, for example, a bot, that's a service. So all these are different services in Azure, and there are approximately 150 approximately services right now. uh, these services can be deployed in 54 more than 54 different region. Now region, when we say region, is not a country. Okay, so in one country there could be multiple regions. Now you go ahead and select in which region you want to deploy it. Now people who are coming from India, they'll say that South India, Central India, West India. Now these are three different regions in India itself. If you go to US, you have got East US, West US, West US 2, East US 2, Central US. So all these are different regions in which you can go and do the deployments. Okay, now remember, think about region is like a data center, but that's not completely true, because one region can also have multiple data centers. Okay, now think about this way. Let's say we have East US. So East US is a very big area. Okay, in that area you can go ahead and do the deployments in one of the data centers in East US. Okay, now this is how regions are structured in Azure. Now throughout the course we'll keep talking about regions and data centers, so you don't have to worry about it. Very lately a new region has also been added in Africa, so you can now see how the growth of Azure is happening. It's available across all the it's in fact the data centers are available across the geography. You can go and do the deployment as close as possible to your customers. Okay, so if you are sitting in, for example, UK, and your customers are in US, so you can go ahead and do the deployment in UK, then move your resources in production environment in US, so that they sit as closely as possible to your customers. All right, now apart from this, it is Azure is available in 140 plus countries, which means customers from 140 countries can connect to Azure. Okay, so deployment happens in approximately 55 56 regions, but then people from 140 plus countries have access to Azure. Okay, now let me show you a few clippings here which are very interesting. Now if you see this clipping, this is approximately 6 to 6 months old. Now this says that Microsoft beats Amazon in 12-month cloud revenue. Now this is all about Azure and AWS, but the idea here is not to show you that Azure is better or AWS is better. The idea here to show this clipping is that if you see the total amount of revenue, which is $26 billion approximately for AWS and for Azure as well. So you can now see that these companies are investing so heavily into the cloud market that a lot of companies, they have started moving towards it. They are seeing the benefit, they are moving towards it, and that is why you also have to upgrade yourself so that you can work in the cloud. Now, there are still a lot of companies which are working in the on-prem environment. So first of all, you have to, there is a lot of requirements for the migration consultants. There is a lot of requirement for cloud developers. Then there is requirement for cloud architects. So there is huge bunch of job requirements which are there in the cloud area. Okay, so that is why you can see the revenues are growing, and this is approximately 6 month old. So you can now expect these revenues to be closing, I think, more than $30 billion, and they are growing approximately 40 to 50% every quarter. Okay, so you can understand that what is the kind of speed that they are getting out of these, out of these cloud solutions, right? Next image that you see on top here, this is being taken from Gartner. What it says is that Microsoft and AWS are basically the leading cloud vendors. In fact, they are the leaders in the cloud space. Okay, so Google is also a leader, but it's still a bit far behind than Azure and AWS. Apart from that, there are other companies who are investing heavily. For example, Alibaba Cloud, Oracle, IBM, and there are lots more. Okay, so these are all the cloud providers that are coming up in the market. They are in fact already there, but they are spending heavily into the cloud space. And but still, AWS and Microsoft are the leaders right now in the cloud arena. Okay, last, in fact, the second last interesting figure that you're seeing on your left hand side is about the revenue numbers. So I'm going to give you, very small glimpse of it, what kind of revenues these companies are earning. So if you see the SaaS market, now SaaS is basically called software as a service, right? So in 2017, the revenue was close to $60 billion. Now, if you see on the right hand side, it is in 2021, it'll be approximately $117 billion, approximately a two-time jump or twice the jump in just 4 years. And if you look at things like the PaaS services which are being offered by AWS, Azure, Google, in 2017 it was only $12 billion, but in 2021 that would be touching approximately $27 billion and even more than that. So that is why these PaaS services are very important. They are growing at a very rapid pace. The last one which you'll see here is the IaaS, which is the infrastructure as a service, which includes things like virtual machines and all that. In 2017, when you just want to take some infrastructure and run your applications on top of it, in 2017 it was approximately $30 billion. In 2021, that is approximately three times, it is going to touch $83.5 billion. So you can see that within a span of 4 years, there is going to be huge jump in all these services. And that is where we have started seeing the job trend, the market trend going towards the cloud. But now you can probably understand that why these things are growing, right? So $30 billion to $90 billion is a huge jump in 4 years, three times the overall revenue in 2017. Okay, so that is the power of cloud. All right, now the last figure which you see here is the which has been taken from Azure. If you see very carefully, this is a word map, and it tells us whatever blue icons you see here or blue circles you see, that is basically the Azure data centers, or basically those are the Azure regions. So you can see it has been spread across the regions. There are lots of data centers or lots of regions in US. Then we have in India, then we have in Korea, China, we have in Europe, a lot of data centers are there. So you can go ahead, and then you have in Australia. So that's how, you have in South Africa, and there is one more in the Africa region that has come up recently. So you can see across different regions, there you can go ahead and do your deployments. Okay, so that's all is about the introduction of Azure. Let me see, I think few people have asked me some questions, so let me just check that. uh, Rajesh is saying, is it available in China? I think Rajesh, you probably got your answer. Yes, it is available in China, but with restrictions. There is a public cloud offering from Azure, which means anybody can go ahead and do the deployment. That's what we are going to do. But apart from that, there are some government-related stacks as well. So if you want to comply with, let's say, the China government policies, there is I think a stack in China, Azure stack. If you, I think then there is in Azure US. So if you have to deploy some applications for the US government, you have to comply with their policies. So that's what, those are very highly confidential and totally isolated environments that are being provided by Azure. So there are different types of based on the based on the governments, if they have some specific requirements, Azure has went ahead and provided a dedicated environment for those where you can deploy applications for those governments. Okay, and Ashish is saying that is there a difference in resource availability in different regions? Good point, Ashish. Yes, there is resource now some of these services, most of the services like the VM storage account, they are available in most of the regions. But then there are very few services which are let's say available in US market or in US regions, but not available in India region. Okay, there are some services which are limited like that, but there are some services, for example, which are coming up new, that may be only available in, for example, let's say US, and later maybe in, let's say, a couple of months, that will come in UK or Australia or India. Okay, so that's how things are. Most of the services are available in all the regions, but still there are very few services like data lake, uh, Databricks, so, or they are available across few regions only, but then going forward they will be added to the other regions as well. Okay, and let's see what other questions are there. uh, Ashish is saying, let's say if it's a GPU, can I find only in the US? I think Ashish, your question is probably answered. And Rajesh is saying, in China, is it through a third party? No, Rajesh, in China it's not through a third party, it is by Azure only. Okay, and one person is saying named Edureka guest. So guys, if you have Edureka guest, just put in your name in the question itself, so I can know who is asking that. So he's saying, can you elaborate more on the job opportunities if we successfully do Azure 300? So uh, see, if you are trying to move towards the cloud environment, you need to know different cloud services. Of course, you need to, if you are moving into the architect role, that's AZ300 is one of the best certifications, because that's what it's meant for, architects. Okay, now if you do it, guys, I would say that uh, during the course of this, even during the throughout this course, my focus is just to, at the end of the class, I'll tell you what kind of questions you might be asked in that particular topic, but my focus is not just on certification. So I just want to give you information which, even if they are not important from certification perspective, but I want you guys to know about those things. So I'm going to share the stuff as if you have to go and practically implement that. So that's what my focus is going to be. But of course, because it is geared towards AZ300, so we'll try and restrict ourselves to the AZ300 topic. Of course, I'm going to tell you some of the questions that might come in your exam. I'll keep giving you hints, so that's important. But then remember, I'm going to focus more on giving you information which you can practically use in your projects. Okay, and Amaya is saying, why there is only one data center in South America. Amaya, that's how it is. So if you have, we can just go ahead and, so if they'll get more customers there, they will go ahead and set it up. Okay. So whenever they say that, why we have, let's say in this area, why don't we have more data centers? The reason is that they have to work with the governments, they have to get the land, they have to get all the permissions, set up a data center, and they have to see the viability, they have to see that is it an earthquake prone region, or how secure is that. So they have to see a lot of different things, then only they go ahead and set up a data center. Okay, and Vijay is saying, difference between PaaS and IaaS, can you provide example of this? So Vijay, when we say IaaS, which is the, okay, let me write it down so that everybody can see that. Okay, so when we say IaaS, this is called infrastructure as a service, which means if you have VMs, right? So you're setting up virtual machines, you are setting up, for example, IP addresses, or if you're setting up some NSGs. Now, why this is called as an infrastructure service? The reason is that you have to manage this infrastructure yourself. Okay, so this means if you get a VM, you are totally in control of that VM. You get only the infrastructure. You go ahead, you do whatever you want with that VM. You deploy any software, you deploy the patches, you handle everything. So that's called infrastructure as a service. So they are not going to give you, you now, why is this beneficial? Because you don't have to need to have any physical infrastructure. You only go ahead and say I need a VM, or basically I need a machine. You're going to get a virtual machine in the cloud. But after that, it's totally your job to manage that, to work with it. You get complete control over the infrastructure. Okay, so that's called IaaS. Then we have the PaaS services, which is called platform as a service. Now, platform as a service means that you don't want to get into the complexity of handling a VM. Okay, some people, if you're coming from on-prem background, you might think that no, why don't I have access to the infrastructure? Why don't I have access to the VM? But the point is that if you get access to a VM, of course you can deploy anything. But let's say if your only requirement is to deploy a web application, why do you want to go into this complexity of handling the VM, handling the patches, handling the deployment? Why do you want to go into that? That's why you have platform services, where you can simply say that I have a available space where I can put in some code and that code will run. So if I say I want to deploy a web application, I don't need to handle the VM. I'll simply get an environment where I'll put in my web application and that web application will run. Okay, so that's called where you get the complete platform, where you don't have to manage the infrastructure. Okay, so you only have to worry about your application, not about the infrastructure. That's called platform as a service. Okay, all right. So Vijay, I hope this is clear to you. And Rajesh is saying, does Microsoft have a direct Azure data center in China? Rajesh, I'll have to cross check that, but not very. I think yes, they have data centers in China. I think you can see in this chart as well. Okay, so you can see China North 2. Then we have, yeah, so only two data centers. Then we have in Korea and Japan as well. Okay, and Shankar is saying, will there be latency impact if I choose resources from different regions? Yes, Shankar, of course, there would be some latency. If your data is traveling from US, let's say if you are in India, and if your data is traveling from US to India, of course, there will be some latency. Okay. And Benedict is saying, I'm new to Azure. Guys, if you are writing any question, I would urge you that please write everything in one single sentence. Try to keep that sentence short. If you'll write multiple sentences and a lot of people are asking questions, that gets merged up. I'm not able to see the stuff. Okay. And Vijay is saying books or reference links. So Vijay, you'll have to wait for that. I'll keep doing that a bit later. Okay. And Ashish is saying, request you to please share the questions to be asked from 10 topics. Ashish, you can simply go ahead and see in AZ300. But if you have any doubts, wait till the end. We can talk more about the certification. Okay. Uh, Dinesh is there. Dinesh is saying, when are we going to get the live project assignment? Dinesh, that is going to be at the end of the course. So you'll have to, meanwhile, please, keep practicing me in the meanwhile. Okay. And Ashish is saying, I meant weightage. So Ashish, as I said, so we'll see the weightage at the end. There is, you go to the AZ300 link, you'll get the complete weightage of each and every topic. Okay. And Vijay Santi is saying, then what is the difference between PaaS and SaaS? Okay, Vijay Santi, I'll come to that. And Natraj is saying, I'm completely new to the cloud and no idea about that. Request you to start with cloud uh, SaaS and train about Azure people. So I'm not sure, Natraj, if I got your complete question. If you're new to the cloud, I am just starting, with the very basics of Azure. Okay, so don't worry about that. We are not going to skip up things. So we are going to focus on each and every topic from the very basics. All right. And last question is regarding latency. Does data transfer between regions occurs over some Azure backbone network? I think, guys, as I said earlier, some of you do have some heads up. So, do have some heads up in Azure. Just hold on to some of those things. This is very beginning of the class. I would expect you to, we'll talk about these things. We'll come to that. That what is Azure backbone network, how it flows through internet. So we'll talk about all these things, but whatever we are discussing, I would just urge you only ask questions regarding that. So yes, you said sure, so thank you so much. And let's now go ahead, guys. That's all I have in the introduction of Azure. And let me come out of this, and we are very much on time. So what I'm going to do now is bring you to the very first topic. I hope I have tried to give you some information on the Azure side. We have spent around 50 minutes, but I think that's good enough. So what I'm going to do now is take you to the very first topic. Okay, now before I go there, let me tell you that some of you might find that our speed is a bit fast, some of you find it could be slow, but remember, I'll try to keep the pace which is closer to everyone. So if you find something fast, you can go through the recordings, and if you find that it's a bit slow, you'll have to hold on at least for a couple of classes. Then we are going to pick up our speed a bit more, so that people can come on board which are very new, and then we can pick up the speed. Okay, all right. So first thing that I'm going to show you here is something called as, let's see if I can go to the correct, let me just come out of this. Okay, so that's our first topic, which is the Azure Resource Manager. So this is where I'm going to slow down now. I'm going to start, talk about the very basics of what is Azure Resource Manager and how you can use it. All right. Okay, let me just elaborate this and tell you what is Azure Resource Manager. Now, whenever you have to do any kind of deployment in Azure, now forget about the word deployment. Think about if you have to create any resource in Azure, okay, which means if you want to create a network, if you want to create a VM, if you want to create a storage account, if you want to create a bot, all these, whenever you have to create these resources, you have to use Azure Resource Manager. This is the one single layer which is responsible for doing any kind of deployment in Azure. So if you have custom tools like Terraform and all, now if you have heard about it, and if you want to create some resources using Terraform, again you have to use Azure Resource Manager. Okay, so this is the one single layer in Azure using which you will be doing any kind of resource creation in Azure. Okay, now whatever you see in the diagram here, let's say we have got network, we have got compute, which is like the VM, then we have Microsoft.storage, which is the storage account. Now all these things which you see here, these are called as resource providers. Now I'm going to give you some terminology here. All these things like the storage service in Azure or the VM service in Azure, these are called as resource providers. Okay, so they are going to be provide us some all these resources. So these are called as resource providers. Okay, whenever you go ahead and create a storage account or you go ahead and create a VM, right? If you can see here, you create a VM, you create a storage account. So these, when you go ahead and create it, these are called as resources. Okay, so resource provider is a service in Azure. Okay, so whatever I showed you, there are 100 plus services. All these are called as resource providers. Whenever you create that resource, which means now you want to have your own storage account, that is called as a resource. Okay, now whenever you create a resource, you want to store it in, let's say, some location. Okay, or in fact you want to store it somewhere, right? You want to arrange that information, arrange those resources. What do? You store that resources in something called as a resource group. Now think about resource group is like a folder. You will go ahead and create a kind of a folder in Azure, and then you will say that I want to store certain set of resources in resource group 1, certain set of resources in resource group 2, and maybe certain set in resource group 3. Or think about this way, if you have, let's say if you are creating an application and you want to have a dev environment, you have a pre-prod or the UAT environment, or you want to have a production environment. What you will do, you are not going to create the same set of resources and put it inside a single folder, right? So you will always want to have different folders, one for dev, one for pre-prod, one for production. So there you can go ahead and create 3 different resource groups. Okay, then you are going to create your resources and put your resources into that resource group. Okay, all right, so everybody clear on these 3 things? Because we are going to talk about resource group, resource providers throughout our course. So it's important you understand the terminology. What is a resource group, which is like a folder? Then you have the resource provider, which is the services in Azure. And then whenever you create an instance of that service, that's called a resource. Okay, so I hope everybody is clear on these three things. Let me now go ahead and show you in Azure portal how do you actually work with that. Okay, first thing that we are going to see is what is the resource group. So it's a simple folder. Let's go ahead and create that folder so that we can take a tour of the Azure portal. Then we'll see how we can create a resource. Okay, let me come out of this. All right, so people who are very new to Azure, after you sign up for your free subscription, which if you need I can help you at the end. If you need, after you create your own subscription and you sign in, you have to go to portal.azure.com. Okay, so this is the link to go to the Azure portal if you want to create any kind of resource in Azure. Okay, all right, so I was actually at the same page, but I'm going to go to portal.azure.com. Now what you see here is this is my Azure portal. Now this is my home page. On the left hand side, you will see all the services, not all, but some of the favorite services which are there in Azure. Okay, if you want to create a particular resource, okay, all right, if you want to create an instance of a particular service, you can go to create a resource, or you can go to all services. Let me show you first create a resource. And Abhijit is saying, can you have multiple resource group in single subscription? Yes, Abhijit, you can have as many number of resource groups you want to, you want under a single subscription. All right. Now, if you want to create a resource, you can see there are options here. For example, if I want to do storage, I can go to storage here. Then I can see the option of storage account. So, okay, so if I click on this one, I can go and simply set up my storage account. All right. Now, apart from this, if I close this one, then I'll go ahead and say all services. Now, this is one of my preferred ways of doing things. I can click on all services, and then I can simply go and search for a particular service. That's one of the best ways I feel it is there. So I can go ahead and say storage. Then I can click on storage accounts. Okay, think about if we want to create a storage account. Now, apart from that, you can also go to storage account from here, which is the favorite place. Now, this is not what we want to start with. What we want to start with, we want to create a resource group. Okay, how do I go to resource group? I can go and click resource groups here, and then I can go ahead and click on add. Now these are some of the resource group I've already created, but we want to start with the new one. So I'll go ahead and click on add. Now what you see here, we have the option of subscription. Okay, so when I said you will sign up for a free trial subscription, you will get a name of a subscription like free trial. Okay, I have got a subscription name MSDN platforms. In the same way, you will get a subscription name free trial. Okay, or if you have already created your subscription and if it's free trial and if it is exhausted, you can sign up for a pay as you go subscription. Okay, now this is how you will see your subscription. Inside your subscription, you can go ahead and sign up for or in fact not sign up, you can create a new resource group. Okay, so I'm going to say source group. This is going to be, let's call it Edureka June 2019. Okay, so throughout the course we are going to use this name so we can, we'll always remember what is the common resource group that you're creating. All right, so I'm going to use Edureka June 2019. Now you can see here the list of all the regions. East US 2, in the same way South Central US, West US 2, Central US. Then you have in Africa, which is South Africa North. Then you have Asia Pacific, you have Canada, you have Europe, you have South America, again US, but these are recommended ones. And then there are some other ones as well: West Central US, Australia, Japan, Korea, India, Canada, Europe, Middle East. So you can see there are lots of places in which you can create your resources. Okay, so we are right now only talking about creating a resource group. Now let me go ahead and select, for example, West US 2. Now you might think that if I'm selecting a resource group and if I store a particular resource in this resource group, does it have to be in West US 2? The answer is no. Okay, so let me write it down. I think somebody was asking about me about the SaaS service, so I think I forgot that. But if you can remind me a bit later, we'll come back and I'll tell you the difference between a PaaS service and a SaaS service. I hope that is okay with you, right? Okay, so let me first talk about if you are creating a resource group. So if you create your resource group in, for example, West US 2, then you can have, just give me a second. Guys, just give me a second. My monitor just went off. Okay. Meanwhile, Dinesh is asking how to decide which region we should select while creating the resource group. So, Dinesh, while creating a resource group, there is no restriction on where you can create it. Now, what I'm telling you is that's actually will help you answer your question. So, whenever we say that we are going to create a resource group in West US 2, this means that it's not mandatory that you deploy all resources in West US 2. Okay. So, this means you can deploy resources in any resource group you want in any region, and those resources can be a part of your resource group. Okay, so this means whenever you create a resource group in West US 2, by default it only tells you that that is the default region. If you don't want to create in that default region, that's okay. Go ahead and create your resource in any region you want. Okay, I hope Dinesh that answers your question as well. uh, so that's all about, that's the important property of resource group. What you can do here, I'm going to select West US 2 here, go to next, and that's it. I'm going to click on next here. They say review plus create, and I'm going to create my first resource group. Okay, pretty simple thing. This is like a folder. Remember, there is no subfolder like concept. So let me go to here. Now, whatever you create, this is the notification panel. You will see everything coming up here. You can go to the resource group from here, and this is how you will see your first resource group. Okay, so remember, there is no concept of subfolder like thing. It's like a container. You create that container, then you put any resources you want under that resource group. Those resources need not be in the same region like the other, based on the region of the resource group. Okay, all right, let's see. I hope everybody is clear here. Let me see. There are few questions coming up. And Ashish is saying what resources we could move within resource group. Ashish, that's a bit jumping ahead. Just hold on to that one. And you're saying second question, does it change the URL? So there is no URL here. When you create a resource group, it's just like a container. Okay, so there is no URL for the resource group. Okay, number three is if I want to not change the URL, I think that's not valid because there is no URL for the resource group. And Prashant is saying, what does common life cycle mean in the definition of resource group? So Prashant, I'm not sure where you're seeing it. Are you seeing it in the presentation? So what we so if we talk, we'll talk about it a bit later. I don't want to introduce it right away. And Juma is saying how to sign up for the subscription. Juma, that will be done at the end of the class. And Roshan is saying free trial for 1 month is $200. This is too less for practice. Is there any alternative? Roshan, $200 is way too much. So whenever you will sign up for a free trial subscription, that is a huge amount. So you will see that you're not going to exhaust all this amount until and unless you are not being careful. So again, at the end, I'm going to tell you some basic things about it so that you will be able to create as many resources, but you will still be under $200. Okay, and I think Natraj is saying creation of resource group is a region independent as opposed to original region of the real location. Yes, Natraj, creation of a resource group can be in any other region. Creation of a resource can be in any region, but then that resource can reside under this resource group. Okay, and Aziz is saying, are you going to explain tags later on? Yes, Aziz. So guys, just wait for me. I'll keep doing things. Whenever I'll think that a particular topic needs to be introduced, I'll do that. So do not, I would just suggest you don't look into all these topics here and there. Whenever I'll think that that's important, I'm going to introduce that thing to you. Okay, this is just the beginning of the first class, so I don't want to introduce too many things to you right away. So I'm going to do it very slowly, get you all on the speed of Azure, and then keep introducing you things between the course. Okay, I hope Aziz is okay with you. And Amlan is saying, while creating resource group, there is an option of tags. Again, I think the same question. And uh, Shubha is saying, is there cost associated with resource group? Good point, Shubha. I was expecting somebody to ask that question. So whenever you create a resource group, that's totally free of cost. Okay, no cost associated with creation of a resource group. And one person is saying resource group help in access control as well. Yes, resource group will help you do access control and handle the security. So when we'll go to the topic of security, I'm going to show you how you can set up your security at the resource group and also at the resource level. Okay, and let's see, Shubha is saying, can you please call out cost implication for services we create? Yes, Shubha, during the course, we'll talk about the bit of pricing as well, where I'll think that this is important to know. Otherwise, pricing is a pretty transparent. You can go and simply look for the pricing, but I'll keep pointing out towards the prices as well. Okay, and Ashish is saying, if I want to migrate from VM from resource group 1 to resource group 2, yes, Ashish, once you create some resources, you can not all, but some of the resources, if you want to move from resource groups, one resource group to the other, yes, you can do that. Okay, uh, and Roshan is saying 1 month. I think that's already answered about the free trial subscription. Abhijit is saying, do resource group have unique IDs linked to subscription IDs? Abhijit, yes, resource group have their IDs. I'm not sure actually. This is the first time somebody asked me about it. Let me see in the properties. Yes, so whatever resource group you create, that has a particular ID, but that ID is not like a GUID. It's a complete URL itself. All right. Now this is actually not a URL, but this is actually the resource ID. Yes, it is linked to a subscription. Okay. Um, and Aziz is saying, if okay, that's already done. Robert is saying, does it help with budget? Good point, Robert. I think that is very, very important. Now, whenever you are creating a resource group, so whatever you will resources you will keep here, and if you want to, while you are done the billing, when you are paying for it, you can see which resources are consuming what amount of your, what amount of resources. So you can then, for example, if you have, let's say if you are an administrator, and or if you are the lead of the team, you can say that, okay, for I'm giving three resource group, one for development, one for UAT, one for production. And tomorrow when you get the bill, you can easily figure out not just the bill, but even live, you can go to the cost center and see that how much you are consuming in the dev resource group, how much you are consuming in production, how much you're consuming in the UAT resource group. So that can help you in budgeting, that can help you in cost management as well. So you can set up the budgets on a particular resource group, saying that this particular resource group, now I can go ahead and say for Edureka June 2019, I don't want to spend more than $50. Okay, so I can set up a budget on top of it so that I don't spend extra on this resource group. Okay, all right. So Ashish is saying, if I want to migrate from VM1 to VM2, I think Ashish, that's already answered, right? And Robert is saying thanks. So guys, that's all I see the end of the question. So as you have seen so far, we haven't left any question behind. Maybe a couple of them I asked you to wait. So don't worry about it. Once we'll go to the relevant modules, I'm going to bring it up and answer them. Okay. And if you still think that needs to be answered now, maybe at the end of the class, just drop in again. We'll talk about it. Okay. So that's all we have, how to create a resource group. Now, let's take a break for 5 minutes. Do you guys want to take a 5 minute break? Anyone who wants to take a break? Only one person saying yes. Yes, a lot of people saying yes. Okay, so let's take a 5 minute break, and I hope everybody is fine so far. Now, after we come back from the break, we'll see how we can create some resources. Then we'll start looking into a lot of different ways how we can, not just create it from the Azure portal, but use a lot of command line tools, use PowerShell, use Visual Studio, and different different IDs to create our resources. Okay. All right. So if somebody has any questions, I'm going to answer it offline, on the chat window. But otherwise, let's take a break. Somebody was saying 10-minute break. No, we have very less time. So we'll do it in 5 minutes. So we'll meet after 5 minutes. Okay, so everybody back. So guys, what I just got 3 or 4 more questions during the break, and I just try to answer that as well. Maybe just a couple of things left. So guys, again, because there are lots of questions, very enthusiastic class. So please feel to keep your questions with you right now and drop me at the end, while or maybe in the other break. Then I'm going to answer that. Okay. All right. So what we have seen so far, we can go ahead and create a resource group. Okay, so the resource group means that it's just like a folder. You can, whenever you want to create something like a storage account, or you want to create a VM, you go ahead and create that under your resource group. And this is what we are going to do now. I'm going to show you a very simple way, or in fact the first thing, of deploying a particular resource. Okay, and Natraj is saying hi. So anything, so guys, uh, yes, Natraj, if you're saying something, so guys, again, he's saying, somebody's saying my voice is breaking. Is it clear for everyone? Guys, just checking, is my voice clear? Yes, it is clear. Guys, I know it could be, sometimes it could be an issue on your network, and it could be sometimes on my network. But if a lot of people will say that it's not clear, then I'm going to probably, I'll answer next time. But otherwise, it could be an issue on your side. So I'll, you probably can drop off and rejoin, and I think that should help you out in resolving the issue. Okay. All right, so what we have done, we have created a source group. Now let me show you how we can create a storage account. Okay, so I'm going to go to storage accounts. Now remember, this is the first class. It's going to be a bit light. It's not going to be heavy. So I'm just going to show you some basic things. Okay, so I'm going to click on add here and create the storage account. Now remember, the idea here is not to show you the different properties of storage account. This is just to show you how you can create a storage account under a resource group. Okay. Now what you see here, the first thing, very basic thing, it is asking me the storage resource group. So I'm going to select Edureka June 2019. That's our resource group. And then I'm going to keep a name for the storage account. Let me call it edu. Let's see if this is available. Now this is saying that storage account edu is already taken. So remember, whenever you are creating a, in fact there are some services in Azure which are where names have to be globally unique, which means that if I create a storage account with the name edu, then you cannot go ahead and create a storage account with the same name. So those names are globally unique. So I'll keep telling you during the services if it's a globally unique name or not, but storage account names have to be globally unique, which means somebody has already created a storage account with the name edu, which means I cannot do that. Okay, so I have to figure out any other name which is not used by anyone else. Okay, so I'm going to say edu storage AC, and let's see if this name is available. Yes, it is globally available. So I'm going to select a region here. Let me call it. So what was the resource group region? That was West US 2. Now let me go ahead and create this resource in East US. Can I do that? Yes, I can do that. Okay. Now don't worry about these four properties, because when we'll go into the storage topic, we'll discuss all these things in detail. Okay. Now let me go ahead. So only thing you need to remember is resource group name, storage account name, globally unique. Select the location of your storage account. That's it. And forget about these properties. Keep it by default. So I'm going to go to advanced. Next. I don't need to do anything. I'm just going to keep all the properties as is. Go to the next tags. So we'll talk about it a bit later. Go to next, review plus create. And I'm going to create my first, and that's it, validation passed. Let me go ahead and create this storage account. Okay, and Sagar is saying, if we create storage account and delete it, can I take the same name again? Good point, Sagar. Yes, if you, so let me tell you that during my all the classes I use the same name. So you can go ahead, create a storage account. If you delete it, then you can set it up, use the same name again. Okay, but remember, if somebody has already created that name, then you will not be able to take it. So it's sometimes it becomes a slight amount of challenge to figure out a good name. But normally what people do is they will put up, for example, the company name, then hash dash application name, or the organization name, then dash the, let's say, the project name. Okay, or then dash environment name, like the dev pre-prod prod. Okay, so that's how you go ahead and create a naming convention for your storage accounts. Okay, not just storage accounts, but for any resource that you create where the names are globally unique, you have to follow those steps. All right, now this is how you can see here my storage account has been created successfully. So I can go from here, or I can go to the notifications and then click on go to resource. Or if you are if you have moved away from this page, you can go back to directly to the storage accounts, or you can go to your resource groups, go to Edureka June 2019, that's our resource group name, and you can see edu storage AC. So if any one of you want to go ahead and select this, use the same name, you will not be able to do that. All right, now you can see here our resource group is in West US 2, but my the storage account is in East US. So there is no restriction of where you can create your resources. All right, now that's all I wanted to show you for creation. And let's see, Vijay is saying, can you please tell me more about storage account? How is it used? Vijay, please, just be careful. I just said it, so we'll not go into the storage account right now. Only when we'll go to the storage topic, I'm going to give you a lot of detail into storage account. Okay, and Dinesh is saying, what is the condition for validation to be passed or failed? So Dinesh, condition for passing is if all the properties you have provided are correct. Okay, which is then it is going to show you that the validation got succeeded. So first of all, it is going to check if the, let's say, the name is not globally unique. It will fail the validation. If, for example, if something else, some property you have not provided correctly, it will show you the failed validation. Normally from the portal, everything can be done through UI, so the validation never fails. But when you are doing it from other tools, the validation could fail, and that's what we are going to see in the rest of the class. Okay, and Abhijit is saying, is there any restriction on characters used for storage account names? Abhijit, yes, there are restrictions. So probably you cannot use the uppercase. I'll have to cross check that. But if you want to see it, let's do it right away. Let me go to storage accounts. Let me go to add here, and let's try that as well. So, some people, so for example, can I do this? No, it cannot start with, it has to have only the lowercase letters and numbers, so no uppercase, and name must be between 3 to 24 characters. Okay, and Roshan is saying Justin, storage account is free. Roshan, storage account is only free, or in fact, you only pay for storage account when you are putting some data in that. So when I created the storage account and I have not stored any data, this means I am not paying for it. Okay, so whatever amount of data you will keep in the storage account, then only you're going to pay for it. So if you keep just 1 MB of file, you're only going to pay for 1 MB, nothing else. And if you keep 1 MB of file and if you delete it after 1 minute, you are only paying for 1 minute, 1 MB. That's it. Okay, so Natraj is saying storage account is like a formatting hard drive to load and install application. No, Natraj, storage account is like storing your data. Do you know Google Drive? Do you know OneDrive, Dropbox? So that's like a storage account. Okay, so that's how you store the files in that storage account. All right, now let me close this one, and let me tell you one very important thing. So let me close this one as well. Let me go to my resource group, and then I'm going to go to Edureka June 2019. Now, in fact, before I come here, let me show you one thing, which is so we talked about the Azure Resource Manager, right? So what exactly the Azure Resource Manager do it for us? So whenever you want to deploy something in Azure, you come to Azure Resource Manager. How does Azure Resource Manager work? So Azure Resource Manager is basically a layer which you see here. This is the layer in Azure, which is called Resource Manager. On top of Resource Manager, you have got Azure Resource Manager API, which means whenever you want to deploy something in Azure, you are going to make a call to these APIs. Now, normally you don't, if you are doing it programmatically, you can call the APIs directly, or if you are using Azure Portal, like we were using, so Azure Portal is also connecting to this Azure Resource Manager API. Okay, now if you have got, let's say if you have a command prompt, and let's say if you're working with Linux, and from Linux you want to create some Azure resources, what will you do? You will use some kind of bash commands, or if you're working in Windows, you might use PowerShell commands. So you are going to use the command line to again contact to this resource manager API. Okay, so these are some of the APIs that you're going to call. If you are using Visual Studio, if you are using, for example, IntelliJ, or if you are using Eclipse, from there also, if you want to create some Azure resources, you are going to make the call to the same APIs. Again, because you are using all these things like Portal behind the scene, they are making call to this resource manager API. This resource manager API is going to contact to the resource manager. Okay, and what is this resource manager going to do? First of all, it is going to authenticate you with Azure Active Directory. It is going to see if you are, if you are a valid user, if you have the rights to create a particular, a particular resource or not. All that is going to be validated by the resource manager. Okay, so all the authentication, all the authorization is going to be done with Azure Active Directory by the resource manager. Okay, all right, everybody clear? Now, once resource manager does the authentication and authorization, then it is going to contact to these different services. Now, let me just stop here and tell you what are these different services. So we have got VMs, we have got storage accounts, we have got Azure SQL databases. All these are called as different services. Now, initially I told you that these services are also called as resource providers, right? So all these are different resource provider. Now think about it in a different way. Microsoft, when they started building Azure, they went ahead and created different teams. One team is creating the VMs, one team is creating the storage, one team is creating the Azure SQL database. Now all these are different teams. These different teams, whenever they create a new version of a service, for example, they created a version of VM, then they came up next time that by with some enhancements, they want to publish a newer version of the VM. Okay, so what will they do? They will go ahead and publish that VM as a REST point, which means if you know about REST APIs, that's fine. If you don't worry about it. But what they do is they go ahead and publish a newer version with this resource provider contract. Okay, so they will register their newer version with the resource provider contract. So what, whenever you want to create a resource, you're not going to talk to these different services directly. You will pass in your information to the Azure Resource Manager API. Like, I want to create a storage account, so I selected some configuration in the portal passed on that information to the resource manager API. That got passed to the resource manager. It went ahead and did the authentication and authorization that if you are allowed to create a storage account or not. After your authentication is, after you are, it checks that you are allowed to create it, then it contacted the then it contacted the REST point of storage account. Okay, and then it asked the storage account API to create a resource. All right, so everybody got it, how this whole diagram, how the whole infrastructure is flowing. So are going to use you as a user are going to use portal, or you're going to use command line, or you are going to use PowerShell, you're going to use Visual Studio, Eclipse, IntelliJ. After you do that, then you pass in some configuration. That configuration will be passed to the resource manager. It is going to authenticate you, authorize you, everything is fine. Then it is going to contact the individual resource providers. That resource provider will go ahead and create your resource that will reside in your resource group. Okay, all right, so everybody clear on this one? And one person is saying, are you going to share these slides with us? Yes, I'm going to share that. Natraj is saying, so will you give the website name or IP address to connect, right? So Natraj, yes, will give the, so whenever you create a resource, you will, let's say you create a storage account, you will give the storage account name to connect to it. Okay, and Dinesh is saying, what is the difference between on-prem page and Azure page? I'm not sure, Dinesh, where did you see on-prem page and Azure page? And Roshan is saying any example. So Dinesh, if you can provide more information, I can talk about it. And Roshan is saying any example of resource manager or resource manager API. So Roshan, that's what we are going to do in the next 1 hour as well. So just first understand what exactly is the resource manager. Then you'll see that how we can make a contact with the resource manager. Okay, and Ashish is saying what is AD? So uh, Ashish, AAD is the Azure Active Directory, which means all, if you are coming to Azure, you as a user are stored in the Azure Active Directory, that we are going to see in the next, in the upcoming modules. Whenever you are trying to connect, let's say you want to sign in the Azure portal, how do you do that? So while signing into the Azure portal, you sign in with the Azure Active Directory. Okay, so you will sign into the Azure Active Directory. This means you are authenticated. Then you go ahead and create a, let's say, a storage account from the portal. Okay, so you provide some configuration, then you are authorized if you are allowed to create the storage account or not. Okay, after it is being checked, then your information will be given to the resource manager, that will pass on the information to the individual resource providers that is going to create your resources. Okay. All right. And Sagar is saying, what is the difference between Azure Active Directory and ADFS? So ADFS is the Active Directory Federation Services, but Sagar, we are going to take that up in the Active Directory or the security class. Okay. And Dinesh is saying, I have a doubt whether the non-cloud servers are on-prem servers. Yes, Sagar. So the non-cloud servers, or in fact, that's called on-premises. So if you have some, let's say, in context of Azure, if some resources are in AWS, for Azure, that's like an on-prem environment. All right. So whatever is there in the Azure, that's your Azure resources. If there are resources which are in the on-prem environment, then those are your on-prem resources. Whether it is there in the your in your corporate network, or if it is there in the AWS. Okay. I'm not sure why this is mentioned as cloud plus on-prem. So basically, if you want to make a contact to the resource manager, you can do that through any of the tools. Okay, so that's what is the architecture of resource manager. I hope everybody is clear how the resource manager is working, right? Everybody is clear. Okay, and what we are going to do is, now we have seen that Azure portal, using the Azure portal, we were trying to, we gave some information of creating a storage account. That information was passed on to the resource manager. Now, behind the scene, what happened? When we said that please create a storage account, what happened? Portal went ahead and created a JSON file. Okay, so portal went ahead and created a JSON file which resource manager understands. All right, so portal said, as soon as we gave something in the UI, behind the scene a uh, JSON file was created. That JSON file, not just file, but that JSON template was passed on to the resource manager, which went ahead and then created the storage account. So whatever portal is creating JSON document, that you can also create manually. Okay, so then you can create it manually. You can do it via, then you can make a call via command line, or you can make a call via Visual Studio after you create the same JSON template. Okay, remember, resource manager only accepts JSON template, which means it only accepts in a particular format which is there in the JSON. Okay, now after you provide JSON format to the resource manager, it will create the resources. But then JSON document can be, if you're working with portal, it will create a JSON document. If you're working with, for example, command lines, you will have to create your own JSON templates and pass it to the resource manager. But these JSON documents, what you see here, these are called as ARM templates. Okay, so let just give me a second. So these are called as ARM templates. Let me see if I can write it down with a good mouse. Okay, let's see. I hope it is clear to everyone. So these are called as ARM templates. ARM means Azure Resource Manager. Okay, all right. So everybody clear? Now what we are going to do is, first of all, we are going to see that when we created the storage account from Azure portal, where is this JSON template? Okay. Number two, we are going to create an ARM template manually by hand, so that you understand what is there in this ARM template. And whenever you want to automate some things, you can create these ARM templates by hand, and then you can make a call to the resource manager. All right. And Rajesh is saying, can we also have an on-prem cloud environment? Rajesh, yes, I think in some resources are available where you can deploy it on-prem, but then that's very limited. Again, if you have to manage the infrastructure, what's the use? Okay, but if you want to, use things like event hubs and all, you can deploy that in the on-prem environment, but that's not available as is. You will have to contact Azure, and I think there is a way where you can take those services and deploy it in the on-prem environment. Okay, and Vijay is saying ARM API cannot interact with on-prem resources, right? Yes, Vijay, ARM APIs are only available, so you have to call those ARM APIs even if you can call it from on-prem. But then ARM APIs are going to make a call to the resource manager, and resource manager is going to contact to the individual services it is going to deploy that. Right? So Vijay, you're clear on this? And Vaishnavi saying, what is the difference between LDAP and Azure AD? Vaishnavi, again, something I know you guys have a lot of questions on this, but this is again we're going to take it up later in the course. Okay, I hope guys, I'm asking you to wait for some questions. So I hope it is it's okay for you because we are going to take it up later. All right. Okay, so I'm going to come out of this. I hope everybody understands the JSON template, which is and everybody understands that these JSON documents that are being created, these are called as ARM templates. Okay, let me come out of this and let me first show you that. Let me take you back to the portal. Now we are inside the resource group. Now when we created the storage account, where is that JSON template? Okay, right, this question you might be thinking, so where is that JSON template? So in the resource group, you can go to something called as deployments. Okay, just be careful. In the resource group, you can go to deployments, and in the deployments, whatever deployments you have done in that resource group, that will be available here. Okay, so if I do 10 deployments in this resource group, everything will show up here. So this means you cannot make, in your office environment, you cannot simply deploy and remove something and you're done. Everything will get logged into the deployment section. Okay, so I'm going to, in the deployments, I'm going to click on the first deployment that we did. Okay, after this opens up, you can go to template. All right, so in the template section, the JSON document that you see here, this is called as a ARM template. So when we provided our configuration to the Azure portal, it went ahead and it created this particular ARM template, or it created this JSON file behind the scene. Now this JSON file was actually passed on to the Azure Resource Manager. Then Azure Resource Manager parsed this information, and it went ahead and created the storage account. Okay. All right. So everybody clear? How did we get here? We went to the resource group. We clicked on the deployments. In the deployment, we selected the first deployment that we did, and then we went ahead and we clicked on the template, and we can see the complete JSON document which was prepared by the Azure portal. And now this is the same template that we would want to create by hand so that we understand each and every piece of this ARM template. Now think about it. If you want to, if you have working on an application, if you want to create, if you are, you are creating resources in the dev environment, tomorrow you want to do the deployment. Are you going to do the deployment by coming to the portal? No, because if you have got hundreds of resources you are creating, let's say you have got 20 VMs, you have got 3 storage accounts, you have got 1 bot service, you have got let's say a web app. So all these are different types of services. You don't want to create all these things by portal. So what you will do, you will automate all these things by by writing this ARM template and then making a call through your CI/CD pipelines. Okay, so this is why it is very important to understand these resource group. Tomorrow, if they, let's say if you join a new team and they have already created some ARM templates, if they ask you to modify that, that is why you also have to understand what is there in these ARM templates. Okay, so for any kind of automation, for any kind of CI/CD deployments, I hope some of you know about DevOps, CI/CD. So if you want to do CI/CD deployments, so that is where you will have to use ARM templates. And remember, anything you are creating in Azure is being done via ARM templates. That is why it is important for you to understand each and every piece of the ARM template. Okay, all right, so that's how it is. Let's see how we can create this ARM template by hand. And before that, I think 3 or 4 questions are there. Vaishnavi is saying, what is the difference between, I think that's done. Vijay is saying, can I talk? Vijay, if you have any questions, you can put it here. But if you have, if you want to talk, so we can do that at the end. So during the class, I will not be able to unmute anyone. But after the end of the class, if you want to talk something, we can do that. And Ashish is saying, can we store these ARM templates and modify based on the requirement so we can manage programmatically? Yes, Ashish, good point. You can take these ARM templates. You are going to store that in your source control. Guys, remember, you are always, whenever you create these ARM templates for your applications, or in fact for your, for your apps, always store them in your source control. Okay, so that will help you do your CI/CD deployments. Okay, and Roshan is saying deployment tab is the log of all activities. Yes. And Dinesh is saying, call the JSON file. Can the JSON file be the same for 2 storage accounts in one resource group? Great point, Dinesh. So what we will do, we will create an ARM template. From the ARM template, we are going to deploy 2, 3, whatever number of uh, storage accounts you want to do. So we'll create one single ARM template for storage account, and using the same ARM template, we are going to create 3 different storage accounts. Okay, and Sagar is saying, if we download this template, uh, delete all the resources and then upload the template, will it create all resources? So Sagar, let me just go to the next section, and I think your question will be answered right away. Okay, and Roshan is saying, if I delete storage, then deployments will also delete. So Roshan, if you delete the storage account, the deployments will not go away. Only when you delete the resource group. Okay, so if you delete the resource group, then only this deployment section will go, but then also it is being logged at somewhere else. Okay, so that I don't want to bring it up because that's part of monitoring. But then if you delete the storage account, the resource group, then these deployment section will obviously go. Okay, and Patnana is saying, is it possible to connect SQL DB from Azure server, but SQL DB having private IP? I think that's an advanced question. Yes, you can connect SQL DB from Azure server. Okay, so we'll talk about it when we'll go to the database services. All right, now let's now understand. Now we have seen the ARM template. We understand that it requires a JSON. Let's go ahead and try to create this thing, manually. Okay, we'll create everything from scratch. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to use Visual Studio. If you are using Eclipse, you can, that's good enough. If you're using IntelliJ, good enough. If you want to do that in Notepad, slightly difficult because there is no, there is no IntelliSense. That's still good enough. So you can create your ARM template in any ID. Okay, you can use Notepad, you can use Visual Studio, but because Visual Studio supports IntelliSense, so I'm going to use Visual Studio. Okay, but there is no restriction. You can go and create that in Notepad as well. All right, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a JSON file. So I'm going to search for JSON. Okay, and I'm going to say create a new JSON file, and then I'm going to start and create my first ARM template. Okay, so let me just copy a particular thing. Now first thing, when you are creating your JSON template, you have to do 2 things. One is you need to put in the schema. Okay, so whenever I'm creating an ARM template, so this means it requires the schema of the resource manager, right? So this is the schema of the resource manager. Now this is hard coded. You cannot get away from it. You always have to put this in your ARM template. Okay, now let me show you what is there in this ARM template. I'm going to go to the portal, or in fact, I'm going to go to a browser and see what is there in this ARM template. Okay, so can you see this? This is basically the schema of the Azure Resource Manager. So it contains all the information. Okay, so you don't have to worry about what is there in this schema file. You just need to include that as part of your ARM template. All right, so everybody clear? Is everyone clear what is there in the first piece that you need to do in the ARM template? You need to put in the schema, and then you need to put in the content version. Now again, don't worry about this one. This is not an important property at all, but it is a mandatory property. That is why you have to put it. Okay, guys, everybody clear? The first basic thing, you need to create a JSON file. You can do that in the notepad as well. You need to put in the schema and you need to put in the content version. Okay, now next thing is, let's understand the different types of sections which are there in this ARM template. The first, or in fact the another mandatory section is called as the resources. Okay, this is where I'm going to specify what resources I want to deploy. If I want to deploy a storage account, I'm going to put in the information of the storage account under resources section. If I want to create a VM, I'm going to put all the information of the VM under this resources section. Okay, all right, so I'm going to use now. If you are not worked with JSON before, that's okay, because every time you don't need to create all this manually. But important thing is that you need to understand what is there in the SAM templates. Okay, and Dinesh is saying is the schema will be the same for all storage accounts. Dinesh, not just for storage account. Whenever you want to create any type of application, you have to put in this schema. Or in fact, whenever you want to create any service in Azure, you have to put in this schema, because this schema is for Azure Resource Manager. Okay, and Vaishnavi is saying these parameters are from the auto-generated template. I'm not sure, Vaishnavi, if you're talking about this one or in the portal. So if you're talking about the parameters in the portal, right now we are just starting from a scratch template. Yes, you're talking about portal. Now in this particular schema as well, or in fact in this JSON document as well, we are going to create parameters. Okay, and Vijay is saying date as any relevance in schema URL. No, so basically Vijay, this is one particular schema that you simply need to go ahead and put in your ARM templates. Date has this particular is the complete schema. This is a mandatory thing, so you don't have to break it down. You simply have to take this one and put that in your ARM templates. Okay, and Nataraj is saying schema link is like a gateway for app to communicate with Azure. No, Nataraj, schema is a way for you to create it. Then you are going to pass it to the resource manager. Resource manager will see that you are saying that it is adhering to this schema, and then it is going to validate if it is adhering to that schema or not. Okay, and Vijay is saying, is it relevant to ARM ARM ION? So Vijay, basically ARM version, content version is not at all relevant. If you're talking about this one, yes, it is important. Please just go ahead and copy the same stuff. You don't have to touch this particular schema. Simply put that in your ARM templates and that should be good enough. Okay, all right, so what I'm going to do now is look into the first section, which is the resources section, and there I'm going to decide what kind of resources I want to create. Now think about this way. If I want to create a storage account, I can put it here, and in the same ARM template, if I also want to create, for example, VM, I can do that. Here, if I want to create one more, let's say second storage account, I can do that as well. Now, whenever you are doing it from from portal, you can create only one resource at a time. But using ARM templates, you can create multiple resources at the same time. Okay, all right, so this is how you can see here. If in my if I want to create 3 resources, I can simply go ahead, put up a comma and supply the information of second resource, put up a comma, put up the information of the third resource. Okay, all right, so everybody clear how you can create multiple resources? And Sagar is saying, do I get a template to create a template so I don't have to memorize the syntax? So Sagar, as I said earlier, we can, whenever you are creating it from the portal, you can simply copy that, right? You will get on GitHub lots of templates which are available, but the important point is that you need to understand how do you actually what is contained in those templates. People have created really complex templates. If tomorrow somebody asks you to do some modification in that, it will be really difficult if you don't understand the schema of this. That is why I always focus on people understanding the basics of ARM templates, because tomorrow if you are creating from the portal, you will only get like this. But in the same ARM template, if you also want to create a VM and let's say some cognitive service, let's say a bot, okay, can you do that? only when you understand the complete schema of the ARM template, you can easily create very complex ARM templates that can help you in CI/CD, that can help you in multiple deployments, right? So if you want to create the same set of resources in dev, in prod, in UAT, you simply have to take the same ARM template and do the deployment, right? So this is what you are getting the benefit only when you understand all how the ARM templates work. Okay, and it is going to take only next 1 hour for us to understand the basics of ARM template, and that's it. So after that, you can go ahead and start playing around with the ARM templates. All right. And Suhail is saying, where do you copy schema from? So schema is available on the MSDN documentation. Please go ahead, just copy that. I think that's it. Okay, or you can see it on my screen. I'm going to share these things with you as well. So you just need to pick it up and use it. Okay, and Saish is saying, so one resource group, we will have one JSON file. Saish, a good point. In one resource group, you can have, so basically you just don't need one JSON file, you can have multiple JSON files. Okay, so whenever you will give a JSON file, it is going to take the information out of the JSON file and do the deployment. All right. Okay, so I hope everybody is clear till this point. I see 2-3 more questions, so I'm going to hold on to that. But let's go ahead and create our first resource. So I'm going to create a storage here. So what I'm going to do is provide some basic information required for the storage. The first information is, what is the type of resource I want to create? Now, this is Visual Studio supports IntelliSense. That is why I'm using it. So you can see properties in bold, and you have the properties in not bold. So not bold are optional properties, bold are mandatory properties, but they also have some default values. So I don't need to provide all the values. But first, the important thing is, what is the type of resource I want to create? Do I want to create a VM? Do I want to create a storage account? That is what I can select here. Okay, so I'm going to select search for storage account, and you can see here, because it is IntelliSense, it is telling me Microsoft.storage/storage accounts is for the Azure storage account. Okay, so whatever we created from the portal, in the same way, I can just need to, we went to the storage account section, we clicked on add. In the same way, I am kind of selecting here what is the type of resource I want to create. Okay, all right. Next important property, I have to go and provide a name. All right, so what is the name of my storage account? Let me say edu storage AC2. Okay, remember we have already created edu storage AC. That is why I cannot use the same name again. So I'm going to use a name called edu storage AC2. Okay, what is the next property? Location. Now you can see here there are lots of locations in which I can create my storage account. So I'm going to select, for example, West US 2. Okay, so I'm going to select this location. What is the next property? API version. Okay, now this is something you need to understand. What do we mean by API version? Now, if I go back to the presentation and this particular, let me just elaborate this one. Okay, so what do we mean by API version? Now, as I told you initially, that there are different teams in Microsoft. So what they do is they go ahead, and these teams are working totally separately. Now, whenever, let's say this is a storage account, and if storage team says that we are publishing a newer version, now let's say they created the first version in 2018, then they came up after 1 month, they came up with a newer version. Let's call it 2018-01, let's call it 02. Okay, then they keep adding, they kept on adding more and more versions of the storage account. Okay, so whenever they came up with a newer version, the name of the version became the date. So 2018-02-01, that becomes a newer version which came in February. If I go and say 2018-03-01, this means they came up with a newer version in March. Okay, so whenever they came up with a newer version, they actually went ahead and created a particular date for it. All right, now that is called as a version. So what you need to do, in fact, when we were deploying that through the portal, it always picked up the latest version. Right, so these are the APIs or the versions of your storage account. Whenever we were doing it from the portal, it always picks up the latest version. But whenever you are creating manually these ARM templates, you can go ahead and select which API version you want. Okay, so let me go back to the Visual Studio. And you can see here, I think it came up in 2015 as a preview version. Then it came in 2015 615, which means 15 June 2015. And that is where you will see huge number of APIs which are there. And the latest one is 2019 1st of April. Okay, so they went ahead and created a newer version called 1st April 2019, and you can go ahead and select any of these API versions. Whatever you are seeing in this with this mark, basically they are actually deprecated because that could be incompatible, but all these other API versions are compatible with the previous ones, so you can select any of these API versions. Okay, so everybody clear? I can select 2018 November 2018. It's still going to create my storage account, but 2019 0401, this is the newer version. I can go ahead, and I should always go ahead and use the newer version. All right, so everybody clear? I'm going to select this API version. Now, what we have done so far, we went ahead and provided the schema of the resource manager. We provided the content version. We started creating the mandatory section of resources. Okay, so whenever you are creating the ARM template, resources is a mandatory section. Okay, what we did, we are creating our first resource here. We have provided what type of resource I want to create, which is a storage account. Then I selected what is the name of my storage account, or basically my name of my resource. Then I went ahead and selected the location for a particular resource. And then I selected the API version. I hope everybody is clear on the what is an API version. Okay. Next thing, what I'm going to do, I see there are 3-4 questions. So let me just wrap up this one. Then I'm going to answer your questions. Okay. Now, next thing which I need to provide. Now, these are 4 mandatory properties which should always be there in all the resources. In fact, most of the resources, these properties must be there. Okay. Now, apart from this, there are some when you are creating a storage account, it will have different set of properties. When you are creating a VM, it will have different set of properties. So now I have to provide some additional properties of the storage account. All right, so I'm going to write it down. So guys, till this point it was all, I hope everybody is clear. Do not worry about these properties, because when we will go into the storage class, we will talk about all these properties in detail. Okay, so far just I'm just going to provide some information here, and that's it. So if you'll ask me this question, I'm not going to answer, because we are going to take that in the next class. Okay, when we'll talk about storage. Okay, so I'm going to add some basic properties here. If you have doubts about JSON, feel free to ask. But if you have doubt about these properties, then we are going to discuss it later. Okay, so I'm going to put some basic information here. All right. Just give me a second so I can just put up all these details. Now, these details are specific to Azure storage. Okay. And whenever you're creating a resource, I hope you understand now these properties. All right. Now, whatever you are seeing here, this is the first ARM template that we have created. All right, so this is how you create an ARM template. I hope everybody is now clear. How do we create these ARM templates? Well, of course, I'm going to add more complexity in the next 1 hour, but this is how we have created our first ARM template. Okay, let me save this one. And then I'm going to answer some of the questions. I know, yes, the question that I'm actually expecting from you and that have already shown up in the chat window. So I'm going to first save this ARM template. Let me put that in D drive demo files, and I'm going to name it as first ARM template.json. Okay, I'm going to replace it. So this is our first ARM template of creating a storage account, and let's see what questions do we have. Just give me a second. Okay, Vaishnavi is saying, what is the content version? Just wanted to check from where we get this schema URL and content version. So first part, Vaishnavi, content version is a mandatory property. You can keep it as 1000, or you can keep it as 1.0. 1100. So this is only for you to maintain. So this is not going to be deployed in Azure. It is only for your JSON document. If you just want to, some people want to maintain a version number for their for any, for their files. So what you can do whenever you are creating a newer version of your JSON document, let's say you are adding more resources here. So what will you do? You will create a new content version and then you can check it in, right? But if you don't want to change it, that's still okay because it does not impact your deployment. Okay. The second thing is about where did we get the schema version from? This is available in Microsoft documentation. When I'll share it with you, so you can even copy from, the content I'll share with you. Okay. And Sagar is saying if the storage name provided in ARM template is already taken, then how we can change it dynamically? Good point, Sagar. So if I have provided, so what he's saying is if I've already provided a storage account name, if somebody has taken that, what will happen? This is going to fail. Now, how you can do it dynamically? Maybe you can have some kind of script that will keep adding, for example, things like this, or you can say things like 1 2 3 or whatever. Okay, but this is something you will have to do it, via your scripting. You cannot do a dynamic name change via ARM template. Okay, now some of you might think that that's the limitation, right? But whatever we are going to do next, we can actually make this dynamic, which means we are going to provide this value as a parameter. Okay, makes sense, Sagar? And Ashish is saying we cannot have nested levels in the template, correct? Ashish, we cannot, if you are creating the resources, why do you need a nested level? If you can, think about it. If you are think that one resource is dependent on the other, yes, there is, one property called depends on, which means you want first one resource to be created, then you want the second resource to be created. Okay, so you can provide that, but I'm going to talk about it a bit later. But there is no nesting of resources in the ARM template. Okay, so which means if you want to create 2 storage accounts, you cannot say that I'm going to nest that information. You're only going to provide a sequence of all the resources you want to create. But if you have a dependency that one should be created first, then second one should be created, then we can handle that in the ARM templates. Okay, make sense, Ashish? Let's see, couple of more question. And Bhavani is saying, is it showing the API version for the type which we have selected? Yes, Bhavani, you are right. So whatever, because we have selected the type, it is automatically showing all the APIs for this particular type. If you'll not specify a type here, I think it is going to show you all the API versions of all the resources. Okay, so just, you can that is why you first put in the type. It will automatically show you the API versions which are available for that particular resource provider. Okay, and one person is saying, what about subscription and resource group? Where do you mention those? Great point. That is what, I'm not sure. Edureka guest is asking what is the name of the person. So great point. That is what I was expecting. So we have not specified the subscription and the resource group. Good catch, because you cannot specify the resource group and the subscription in the ARM template. Okay, so whenever you are calling this, whenever you are passing this ARM template to the resource to the Azure Resource Manager, there you will tell the Azure Resource Manager what is the subscription and what is the resource group. Okay, so you cannot mention your resource group in the ARM template. What does that mean? This means that you cannot deploy resources in multiple resource group using the same ARM template. Okay, let me write down this point as well. So guys, I keep writing, these points so that, you can take it as your notes. All right, so in ARM templates, you cannot specify resource group, which means that one ARM template can only be used, or basically one ARM template can only be used to deploy in one resource group only. All right, so everybody clear? Now, of course, this is like a, it's just like a file. You can make a call to the second resource group, you can do the deployment, but then using one single ARM template, you cannot make deployments into multiple resource groups. All right. And Natraj is saying APIs are programming interface latest version, right? Yes, Natraj. APIs are basically you make a call to those APIs, or when we have specified the API here, Azure Resource Manager is going to contact this version of the resource provider. Okay. And Natraj is saying content version is just a random number. Yes, you can put anything you want. All right. And Sohail is saying any space and line gap rule for the JSON. No, Sohail, there is no line gap. There is nothing. You can just go ahead and put it anywhere you want. There is no restriction as such. Okay. But it has to be a valid JSON. Okay. There is no, nothing like the where you put your, any spaces or line gaps. There is no restriction. So, okay. All right. So everybody clear of how we have created our first ARM template. Let me go ahead, save this one, and okay, now it's a time for us to deploy this ARM template. Natraj is saying JSON is like HTML. No, Natraj, JSON is a format. Okay, now this is our first ARM template. Let me show you how do we actually go ahead and deploy this ARM template. Okay, let me show you a very quick thing first. We'll take a break then we'll come back and see what are the other things we can do with it. Okay, now to do the deployment, I can do via multiple ways. Let me write it down for you. Deployment of ARM templates. How I can do that? I can take this ARM template which I have created manually, and I can do the deployment right from the portal. Okay, so I can take this ARM template in the portal and do the deployment, or I can use, let's say, the PowerShell, or I can use Azure CLI, or I can use Visual Studio. I can use Eclipse. Of course, in Visual Studio and Eclipse, you need to have the Azure SDK installed, or I can use IntelliJ, any kind of ID. So you're not restricted to, a particular ID. You can go ahead and do the deployment from a lot of different places. Of course, you need to have SDK. Whenever you will provide this JSON template, the SDK will know how to pass this template to the Azure Resource Manager. Okay, now what I'm going to do first, I'm going to show you how to do it from portal, how to do it from PowerShell, how to do it from Azure CLI. Okay, sounds good, everyone? Now let me go and first of all use PowerShell to do the deployment. Before we use PowerShell, I know some of you might not have worked with PowerShell. So there are two ways in which you can, so PowerShell has its own set of commands. It has its own syntax. Or if you are coming from Linux background, you can go ahead and use the bash commands to do the deployment. All right. Now let me show you, set of instructions that now if you are very new to PowerShell, I have a document basically, so I'm going to share it with everyone. So you can go ahead and set up the PowerShell on your machines. All right. And if you are using Windows, you can deploy Azure CLI also. Okay, there is a utility called Azure CLI. Using Azure CLI, you can run the bash commands. Okay, if you are working in Linux environment, you can download Azure CLI for Linux. Then you can run bash commands to do the deployment in Azure. Guys, remember, if you are coming from Windows background, or if you're coming from .NET background, or if you're coming from Java background, Linux background, anywhere. So you are in Azure, you are not restricted to a particular language, platform, or anything. If you're, you can do the deployment from, not just the deployment, you can use all these services in any kind of environment. You can use Java, Python, PHP, .NET, .NET Core, any kind of environment you want to use, you can do that. And you can also do deployment via Linux, via Windows, and all that. All right, so you're not restricted to any one particular environment. All right, now this is the way to set up set up your environment. I'm going to share this document. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with PowerShell. So once you install PowerShell, you will see Windows PowerShell and Windows PowerShell ISC. I'm going to click on this one, and then I'm going to show you just a couple of commands before we take a break. Okay, so this is how the PowerShell looks like. It's like command window only. You can go ahead and use it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect. First of all, before I have to do the deployment, I have to connect to my Azure account. How do I connect to my Azure account? I'm going to run one single command. called connect AZ account. Now, before you do that, of course, you have to do the setup, which you can look into the document. After you do the setup, you can do connect dash AZ account. Then I have clicked on the connect AZ. In fact, I've pressed enter. Now it is asking me what is your username and password. I'm going to provide the information. Username, and then I'll just provide my password. And this is going to connect my PowerShell, which is a command line tool, which is and a client tool. This is going to connect to my Azure account. Okay, so can everybody see it? This is my account. This is the name of my subscription. Okay, so I'm working in this subscription here, and then this is my tenant ID, so you don't have to worry about it right now. So I'm connected. I'm into my subscription. Okay, can I run one more command? I can say get AZ. I'm just going to run one more command here. So I can say get Azure subscription, which means if I have multiple subscriptions, it will show me a list of all the subscriptions in my account. Okay, so you can see here. So this is how you can work with the PowerShell. All right, so everybody clear? So what we have done so far, we have created our first ARM template, and we have used the PowerShell. Of course, you will have to set up. Then after setup, you can go and say connect AZ account. This will help you to connect to your Azure subscription by providing username password. Then you can run this command if you want to see the list of subscriptions in your account. Now the next part is to do the deployment that we are going to do after the break. Okay, all right, so everybody clear? Is everybody okay? I know there are 2-3 more questions coming up. I'm going to answer that during the break. Guys, is it okay? Do you want to take a break? Yes, some people saying yes, they want to. Only some people. Sagar is saying no. Okay, so but yes, a lot of people saying yes, they want a break. So let's take a 5-minute break. Then we'll start doing the deployment of all these resources. So he'll know 10 minutes, only 5 minutes we have. So the break will always be of 5 minutes. Okay, so let's connect after the break. Okay, so everybody back. Guys, I see there were a few more questions. So I've answered some of them during the break. Let me see those questions. So Natraj is saying with single, if we can have multiples. Okay, so I think what he's saying is if with single, if we can have multiple subscription. Or no, Natraj, I think it's the other way around. You can have, okay, so with one account, you can have multiple subscriptions, and within subscriptions, you can create as many resource groups as you want. Okay, so you are not limited to one single subscription. You can go ahead and create as many subscriptions as you want. Okay, but whatever resources you will create in those subscriptions, you will pay for it. All right. And Dinesh is saying, is this the ID of the resource group? I'm not sure, Dinesh, which ID you're talking about. There is no ID, right? Oh, okay, so what you are saying, is this the ID of the resource group? No, this is the ID of the subscription. Neither this ID, so none of these IDs are of the subscription. This is only, this is the ID of your subscription, and this is the ID, this is the tenant ID, which we'll talk about later. Okay, all right. And there is one more question, difference between connect AZ account and AZ login. Let's see if AZ login is there. I'm not sure. So AZ login is not there. If you can tell me, where did you see the AZ login? We can talk about it. All right. So everybody clear? Now we have got what we have done so far. We have created our first ARM template. We have used the connect AZ account to connect to our account, and then we have seen the run another command called get AZ subscription. Not required, but still just to show you, you can run this command and see your current subscriptions. Okay. Now that we have to deploy our ARM template uh, into our Azure subscription, what is the command that we need to run? Okay, so just keep an eye here. So I'm going to use a command called test AZ resource group deployment. Okay, now this command is going to be used to first test if my ARM template is valid or not. Right, so yes, somebody was asking me about the validation process. Now when you run the test AZ resource group deployment, this is going to test if our ARM template is valid or not. All right, now I'm going to provide the resource group name. Now somebody asked me a really good question. What about the resource group name? So I'm going to provide the resource group name here, and I'm going to, you can see here, I have got 4 resource groups in my account. I'm going to select Edureka June 2019. All right. Now, if you don't get this, with the IntelliSense, you can provide the name yourself. Okay. Then I'm going to provide the additional information. Now there is something called as mode, which I'm going to talk about it a bit later. So there are 2 options in mode, incremental and complete. And then I'm going to provide the last set of information, which is about the template file. Okay, so whatever ARM template that we have created, we can provide it using template file. Okay, now where is our ARM template? It is there in D drive, demo files, first ARM template. Okay, so this is the one we have created. Now this is what we need to specify. Then I'm going to specify verbose. Okay, so let me tell you what does all this mean. So first of all, we are checking if our ARM template is valid or not using this command. Then I'm providing the name of the resource group. I'm providing the mode as incremental. Okay, so we are going to talk about it a bit later. Then we have provided the name, or in fact the location of our ARM template, which is the template file, and then specify verbose. So what do we mean by verbose? If we want to get detailed log of what is happening, then I can provide verbose. Okay, so it is just going to provide me some additional information of what is happening when I run this template. Okay, so I'm going to press enter here, and then it is going to pick up my ARM template and check if it is valid or not. Okay, so every time, so basically you should make it as your practice that first run a test so that you can see if your template is valid or not. Okay, now what is the next thing? Now we have to deploy this ARM template. So my template is valid, so I have to go back and go ahead and deploy it. So I'm going to run the same command with slight amount of changes. What is that change? Now I'm going to use a command called new AZ resource group deployment, which means I want to deploy it now. Okay, so this is the command new AZ resource group deployment. I'm going to add one additional thing here called the name of the deployment. and let me call it deployment 1. Okay, and the rest of the things remains the same. I have provided the name of the resource group, mode is incremental, and our template file and verbose. Let me go ahead and run this one. Okay, so what is happening here? All right, so it is giving me an error that my deployment is not valid. Let's see the reason for this. Let's see what is the exception here. It is saying the storage account name edu storage ac2 is already taken. Okay, now you can see here, if I have kept a name which has been taken by someone else, maybe somebody from our class only has taken that, right? Can anybody tell me who has taken that name? So what we are doing is we have specified the storage account name edu storage ac2, which has already been taken. So what I need to do is I need to go ahead and change the name of my account. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my template. Let me call it edu storage ac3. All right, and I'm going to run the command again. All right, so I'm going to run it. Now this should help me do the deployment. Okay, so it checked my template, it is valid, and now it has started the deployment under the name deployment 1. Okay, now it is continuously checking the status if the deployment is succeeded or not. So you can see here edu storage ac3 provisioning status is running. So basically it is now doing the deployment with the name edu storage ac3. All right, so everybody clear how we are doing the deployment? New az resource group deployment. Name, you can keep any name here for your deployment. For example, you can keep the name when you are doing your production deployments, like the date. Okay, then you are provide the name of the resource group, you provide the mode as incremental, provide the template file, and say, just a second, so you can provide the template file and then say verbose. It will give you more information like this. Okay, all right, so now the storage account is deployed. Let's go to the portal. Let me go to the resource group, and you can see here edu storage ac3 has been deployed. All right, so everybody clear? This is how we do the deployment. Okay, all right, and if I go, let me go back to the portal. Let's go to the deployments tab. Can you see here we have deployment 1, right? So I can click on deployment 1, which means now whenever we did the deployment through portal, or we are doing the deployment from PowerShell, or we are doing it from Visual Studio or from CLI, everything is being captured in the deployment section, right? So can we see the deployment, the ARM template that we created? Let's go back to the template. Again, the same process, even if you do it from ARM template, if you do, or if you do it, if you do it from PowerShell, or if you do it from portal, you can see here we have the schema that we use to do our deployment, right? So this means now you can, whatever you are deploying, whatever ARM template you are passing to Azure, that is being captured under the deployments tab. Okay, all right. So I'm going to close this one. Now I'm going to ask you one question. If I run the same command again with the same ARM template, where it is, so it is telling me that I'm going to deploy a storage account with edu storage ac3. If I run the same command, will it give me an error or will it succeed? Can anybody tell me that will it run successfully if I run this command? So Roshan is saying it will be an error. And Shri is saying it will give error. So Saish is saying not valid. All right, so there is nobody saying it will run. Okay, so everybody is saying that this will fail, right? So somebody said that logically it will fail. So let me just run it and see if it works or will it fail. Good point, guys. Lots of active people in the group. Let's see if it works or will it fail. An important thing which you will not get, you have to do these practice and see that if it works or if it fails, right? Let's just wait for a few seconds. And Rajesh is saying it should work. So good point, Rajesh. Yes, it worked. Okay, now you guys are probably surprised. Why did it work? So we were telling Azure that create a storage account called edu storage ac3. That name already exists. What happened here? So Shri, not about the incremental mode. Shri and Robert both are saying incremental. No, Shri, no, Robert. Both of them is not the reason for for this ARM template to succeed. The reason for that is that if, for example, let's say in your project, not even the deployment name, Roshan. So Roshan was saying deployment name. No, guys, it's not because of the deployment name. It's not because of the mode. Think about it this way. If I create an ARM template, okay, and if I go ahead, what did I shared initially? You can go ahead and always store them in your source control. Okay. Now what will happen if you go ahead and keep adding resources? So you can keep adding resources in the same ARM template. Okay, what will that mean? Now if I keep adding resources into the same ARM template, what will happen? Next time, first time I ran it, my storage account got deployed. Next time I want to deploy the VM, and I've added the new VM into the ARM template. Now if I go ahead and run the same command, just like everybody was saying, it should fail. If it will fail, this means I will have to remove the storage account from the ARM template. Now that's not a good thing to do. So what happens is when you are creating the ARM template, it is only responsible for creating the resources. It will check in the same resource group if the same if the same resource exists, it is not going to touch it. Okay, so that is how you do the deployments in your production environment, or if in any environment using ARM templates. So what you are going to do, you are going to keep adding the resources in the same ARM template, then you are going to keep running the same stuff. If the resource already exists, Natraj is saying I did not understand. So Natraj, first, okay, concentrate here. So what we are saying is, if I'm going to use the same ARM template, so this means it is going to check if the resource already exists, it is not going to touch it. If the resource does not exist, it is going to create it. Okay, so I'm going to write it down this point as well. If resource does not exist, it will create. And if resource with same name already exists, it will not touch it. Okay, all right, everybody got it? Natraj, did you got this point? And Roshan is saying if I change the good points. Now there are good number of questions coming up, and I was expecting those questions. Okay, so we are going to see all these things practically. All right, so Roshan is saying if I change the region for same storage account, will it update? Let's see that. Okay, I want to show you all these things practically. So let's go ahead and change from West US to, let's call it East US. Save it. Let's run it. Can you see this? No. So this means if the same if you change, now let me show you this. If you change some of these properties, okay, some of these properties are configurable, so they will get updated, but you cannot change the location or you cannot change the version of a particular storage account, or in fact any resource. If you have let's say a VM in one particular region, you cannot change the location of that VM, because that means now you want to physically move the VM to a different location. In the same way, in the storage account, if you change the location, you are asking for your complete change of your location of your storage account. You cannot do that. You have to delete the existing storage account, then you can go ahead and create the new one. Okay, Roshan, does it make sense now? And Saish is saying that means no resource is created in the second run. Yes, Saish, when we ran the same ARM template, let me put it back. So when you run the same ARM template, if the resource already exists, it is not going to be recreated. Guys, remember, as I written here, if the resource already exists, it will not touch it. This means, now think about it this way. If every time I run it, it will delete my storage account and recreate it. This means I'm also losing my data. Okay, so this means because it is not touching it, so I'm not going to lose any files which are there in the storage account. So this is an important point you need to remember, because people are scared that once I created a storage account, I added some files here, what if I'm going to run the same template again, will it actually delete my files? The answer is no. So whenever you run the same ARM template, it is not going to touch it. This means your files are secure. And if let's say VM is there, and if you do not make, and if you run the same ARM template again, it is not going to make any change to your VM, right? So you do not have to be afraid that your application will be impacted. Okay, Saish, does that answer your question? And Shankar is saying, then does it differentiate between resources created from portal and ARM template? Good point, Shankar. It does not differentiate. It does not differentiate between the resources. Okay, from wherever you want to deploy it. Now, I hope everybody remembers this diagram. So what we are seeing here in this diagram is that whether you create it from portal, whether you create it from a command line, whether you create it from Visual Studio. So we have seen portal, we have seen the command line. You create from any of these tools, again, it is going to go to the resource manager. And because for resource manager, everything is a JSON object behind the scene. If you have created a particular storage account, and if you create another one, there is no differentiation between both of them. Okay, Shankar, I hope that answers your question. And Shri is saying it looks for it parent. The parent is the same, means the resource group is the same, then it won't fail. Yes, Shri, good point. Now, let me show you, one other thing. Now, what Shri is saying is that if we are running the command in the same resource group, right? So that if the resource group name is the same, now let me rerun it. Now I've changed the location back to West US2. If I run this one, it is not failing, which we have already seen. But if I try to run the same ARM template with the same storage account name into a different resource group, will it work or will it not work? Can anyone tell me? Okay, I'm going to repeat my question. Okay, I see there are few more questions. In fact, a lot of questions. So yes, some of you have written. So if I run, now you have seen that this is running. If I run the same command into a different resource group, okay, let me just change this one and say a different resource group. If I run into a different resource group, this is failing. Why this is failing? Because this will tell me the storage account edu AC3 is already in another resource group in this subscription. All right, yes, everybody written that that it will fail. Yes, it is not supposed to work, because if it is in the same resource group, it will not touch it. If you go to another resource group, this means now you are trying to create a storage account with the same name. You immediately got the error which is expected. The account edu storage AC3 is already in another resource group in the subscription. Okay, so Saish is saying, so scope is the resource group. Yes, Saish, the scope is the resource group. Okay, all right, so let me see, there are a few more questions. Guys, you are asking so many interesting questions that is actually helping us, even to cover, for me as well, to cover up these topics. So Roshan is saying, if I change the access tier, will it update for storage account? Now, good point, Roshan. Let me clean up everything. Okay, guys, I hope you are getting this stuff. So what we are doing so far, we have created a ARM template. From the ARM template, we have seen that if I run the ARM template into the same resource group, it is going to create the resources which are not there. If I if the resource group is already there, it is not going to touch it. Okay, now one question was that if I do it into different resource group, then it obviously failed. Now the other question is, if I change some of these properties, will it work? If I change it, actually it will work. Why? Because for every resource, there are some configurable properties. Now, let me tell you, if the property is not configurable, then it is not going to make any difference. Okay, but for every resource, there are some configurable properties. Let me show you that. Let's go back to the portal. Let me go to, in the resource group, I'm going to go to edu storage AC3. And you can see here right now, this is access tier is hot, right? Let me go to configuration. Now I'm going to slightly deeper into this topic. So I'm going to go to configuration. Now in all the resource providers, you will see the option of configuration. Okay, so there are some properties which you can change even after creation of a resource. Okay, so one of these properties is hot or cool. Okay, so I can change it from here as well, from the portal. Because I can change it from the portal, I can also change it from the ARM template. Okay, so in this case, if I change from hot to cool the access tier, then this is going to be updated. So any property, remember, if you try to change these properties, it is going to fail. If you try to change any of these properties which are configurable, it is going to update. If you are trying to make change to a property which is not configurable, then it is not going to touch, it's not even going to throw an error, it is not going to touch those properties. Okay, so Roshan, does it make sense now? And Sagar is saying, but that storage account was created and wasn't deleted, right? Still White successfully created it. So I think, okay, so Sagar, I think we're back to the first question. When we ran the template again, why didn't it deleted it? Think about it this way: if it is going to delete it, this means whatever whatever files you have added to the storage account, they will also get deleted, right? And we don't want that. So whenever, if I run this ARM template, either this should this should this is only going to, so basically the ARM template meaning is that if you run the ARM template, whatever resources are not there, it is going to be created. If the resources are there, it is not going to be touched. Okay, and Prabhar is saying in the resource group, uh, EC2 is not there, so is it, it is say already exist. Okay, so I think you're saying edu storage AC2 is not there, so how it is saying that it is already exist? No, Prabhar, let me just run this one again into a different resource group. I think you're talking about this. So whenever I run this, into a different resource group, it is saying the account edu storage AC3 is already in another resource group in the subscription. Okay, so it is not saying, it is existing in a different resource group within the same subscription. So it gave me this error. If somebody of you will try to create edu storage AC3, you will get an error saying that the name is not available. Okay, all right. Prabhat, does that make sense? And Sohail is saying, can you copy the commands in chat so we can try at the same time? So confidence, please. Sohail, please do not try this right now, because otherwise, a lot of people will start sending me things like it is not working. So I'm going to give you all these commands so you can go back and practice. Okay, if you have doubts, you can come in the next class. I'm going to talk about it. Okay, let's see if there are, yes, there are few more questions. So guys, I'm going to, there are 3 4 more questions. I'm going to hold it for now. I just want to complete the topic as well. So please just hold on to your questions. Let me just go ahead and give you few more things, then I'm going to come back and answer these questions. If I miss something, just drop that question again, I'm going to answer that. I hope it is okay with everyone. Okay, yes, I think there are 4 5 more questions. So okay, so whatever questions are there, please hold on to that. We'll come back and discuss that. Okay, now what we have done so far, let me clean all this up. What we have done, we have created the resource. We have, see how we can do the deployment via PowerShell. Now let me tell you that if I want to, do some additional things in the ARM template, what do I need to do? First thing is, apart from the resources section, there is one more section called as outputs. Okay, so after I create the ARM template, or in fact after I run the ARM template, I want to display some information on my screen. Okay, then I can use the output section, or if you are linking to multiple, you can even link multiple ARM templates. Okay, so you can call the ARM template 1, and from ARM template 1 you can call ARM template 2, from ARM template 2 you can call ARM template 3. Now if you're doing this kind of linking and you want to push some output variables to the other one, you can use the output section. Okay, but right now I'm only going to focus on how you can display the information in the output section on the screen. Okay, so what do I need to do if I have to display the information on of my storage account on the screen? I can go ahead in the output section, I can create my storage account. So I'm going to create a variable. Let me call it output underscore my storage account. All right, so I'm going to put in the information of what is the output I want in this variable, and I'm going to say type is going to be, now what is the type of the output? Okay, so I'm going to call it, you can have an array. boolean, integer, object, string. So I'm going to select object here because I want to have a complete information of my storage account. All right. Then I'm going to select the value. What is the value here? The value is edu storage AC3. All right. So everybody clear what we have done? So we have created an output section. I have created a variable inside, or in fact, I have kept the name of my output, which is output underscore my storage account. Okay. Inside that output, what is the type of this output variable? The type is the object. I can keep integer, I can keep string, and then what is the value of that particular, what is the value of that? It is edu storage AC3. This means it is going to pick up all the information of this edu storage AC3, basically of this storage account, and this is going to show up on my screen. Okay. All right. So everybody fine with this one? Let me go ahead and run this. Okay, so I'm back to my same original statement. New AZ resource group deployment 1, resource group name, Edureka June 2019, and I'm going to run it. Okay, it says the structure is not valid, which means my template is not valid. It is saying the provided value for the template parameter at line is not valid. Okay, so this is telling me that this is not valid. The reason for that is I just kept the value. I don't need to keep the value. I need to keep something called as a reference to my storage account. Now, don't get confused here. What I need to do is I need to create a function which will pick up the value of this storage account. So I'm going to use reference, and then I'm going to put in the value called. All right, so everybody clear what I've done? So I just did a mistake. So what I need to do is I'm going to pick up the reference of a particular resource. So whenever I have to pick up a reference of a resource, I'm going to specify reference edu storage AC3, and this is the syntax of how you provide the reference. Okay. All right, so everybody clear? I'm going to save this one, go and run the same command again. And after the deployment is complete, now there is no deployment happening here. So because the resource already exists, now after it completes its process, it is going to pick up the information of the storage account and show me in the output section. Okay, let's just wait for a few seconds. Now you can see here, it started the deployment. It says the edu storage AC3 provisional status is succeeded. Now it looked into the output section. It picked up that there is a variable name called output underscore my storage account. The type is object. And what is the JSON template for that object? It picked up the complete JSON template of my storage account. Remember, some of the things are optional. Okay, so that is why when we were creating the storage account, we did not have to provide all the information. But after creation, it picked up the complete information of my storage account, like things like it supports HTTPS traffic, it supports encryption. What is the access tier? Remember, hot and cool. Provisioning status is succeeded. What is the creation time? And some URLs as well. So it picked up all the information of my storage account and gave me gave me as an output in the output variable. Okay. All right. So everybody clear how we have used the output section? Any doubts, guys? Anything on this one? Anything on the output section? Is everybody clear how we are using the output section? Yes. A lot of people saying yes. Guys, if anybody has any doubts, don't hesitate to ask it, because we are going to, we can talk about it. And Sri is saying why it was not showing when we were using verbose mode initially. So Sri, when we were using the verbose mode, it was only showing me the status of the deployment. Okay, now when I'm using the output section, I'm saying give me the complete reference of edu storage AC3. It picked up all the information of my account and started showing me here. In fact, if you want to have if you only want to see the access tier, okay, so what you can do, you can do things like this. Okay, and then change the type as string. It is only going to show you the information of your access tier. Okay, if you want to have limited information, you can put it like this. If you want to have detailed information, you can put things like object and say give me the whole information. Okay, all right. And Ashish is saying, yeah, Shri got it. And Ashish is saying, is it possible to get the output data from portal or only through the script? So Ashish, output data from the portal is not available, right? So it is not going to, it's a UI. So it is in the UI, you just go ahead and create a resource. It is going to show you, it's just going to create the resource for you. But if you want to do, you're doing it programmatically, or you're doing from these command line tools, that is where the benefit of understanding ARM template comes in. That if you understand how you can use the programmatically, how you can deploy it, plus you can also visualize the data, plus you can do the linking, plus you can create multiple resources in the same ARM template. All these things are not possible in the portal. This can only be done when you create all these things by hand. Yes, Ashish, you got it as well. Okay, now everybody got it, the output section. Let me go ahead and let me remove it for now, or let's keep it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is tell you two more sections which are not mandatory, but they are very important. The first one is, now I think, very initially people asked me that now you are hard coding the name here. If I don't want to do this hard coding, what do I need to do? Okay, so I need to parameterize this thing. Now most of you, I expect, that understand parameters. If you don't know about it, now parameter is something which we are going to provide from externally, so that we are not hard coding our name, right? So what we want is that we don't want to hard code the name in my template, because I also want to check this in my source control. So what I need to do is I need to parameterize this value so that I can access it later, right? So what I'm going to do is, let me just actually remove this section. I don't want to see the whole output every time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a new section called parameters, and then I'm going to define what are the parameters I want to take it externally and use, and so that I don't have to do the hard coding. Okay, so what I'm going to do is provide a parameter value. Let me keep a name here. Just like we did in the output section, I'm going to keep a name of my parameter. Let's call it param underscore storage account name. Okay, and then what is the type of this parameter? Again, in just like in the output section, I'm going to provide what is the type. This time it is going to be a string. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm accepting a string only, right? And then I can also do few more things here. I can say the minimum length is going to be 5. Now this is something you cannot do via portal. Okay, if you are, if you are asking your developers to have some, you want to follow some kind of policy, okay, that the minimum length should be 5. So you can do these things while you are doing creating the ARM templates by hand. Okay, this is something you cannot do with the Azure portal. Now you are saying here, this is the name of my parameter, this is the name of, or basically this is the type of the parameter, and then the minimum length should be 5. Okay, now let me add one more parameter here, then I'll tell you the benefit of that. So let's call it param underscore environment. Okay, and then I'm going to say type is going to be same stuff, type is going to be string. Okay, and then I can also say what is the default value. Okay, now you have the option of providing a default value as well. So if nobody supplies a value, you go ahead and decide the value yourself. Okay, so these are the additional things you can do with parameters. Then I can also add one very important thing, which is called allowed values. Okay, now first see what I'm doing here. I'm going to say that the value of the environment parameter can only be dev, it can be UAT, or it can be, for example, production. Okay, so I want to restrict the value of this parameter to dev, UAT, and prod, right? So what we are doing here, we have created two parameters. One parameter is going to be the storage account name, type is string, minimum length 5. Then a parameter called environment, which means the type is going to be string, the default value is development, and then the allowed values are between dev, uat, and prod. Okay, so everybody got it. We have created two parameters here. Now what is it that I'm going to do with these parameters? So we are going to accept the value externally, okay, and then we want to remove this hard coding. So what I'm going to do here is, let me introduce one more section. Okay, so we are kind of adding slight amount of complexity into our ARM templates. I'm going to create a variable. Now parameter is going to be accepted externally. Variable is something which is only inside an ARM template. Okay, so just like if you have done some programming, you know that you can accept some parameters and then you can have variables inside your function, right? Like most of the people, I hope, knows this thing. Let me just write down. So you can say, for example, I'm just kind of telling you the difference between parameter and variable, if some of you don't know. So I can say string my storage account name, and then I'm saying string environment, right? And then inside the function, what I can do, I can go and say string string my name, my account name, and then I can say my storage account name plus environment. Okay, so basically I'm concatenating the values from both of them, and then I'm creating my own environment or my own variable, right? And then I want to use the name of this variable to create my storage account. So in the same way, you can come to the ARM template. We have defined two parameters just like a function for us, right? So we have defined two parameters here, and we have specified some configuration for them. Then what I can do here, in the variable section, I can create a new variable. So I can say, let me call it my storage account name. Okay, so the first name was parameter storage account name. This is my storage account name. Okay, so what I can do with this one, I can go ahead and, in fact, so what I can do, I can, in the values, I can concat both of them. Okay, so I'm going to say I want to concatenate the value of the first parameter and the second parameter. All right, so how I can do that? So let me provide parameters. Okay, and then I'm going to provide the value of the second parameter. All right, what is the first parameter name? Param storage account name. And what is the second parameter value? Param underscore environment. So whenever somebody passes the name as edu storage ac2 and they pass the value as prod, then it becomes edu storage ac2 prod, right? Everybody clear how we have done that? Guys, I know this could become a bit complex for you at the first go, but think about this way. If you have one single parameter, or in fact, if you have one single ARM template and you want to deploy that ARM template in UAT, in production, in development, and you even don't want to hard code these names, how do you do that? Okay, so we have seen till now, you can create a resource here, okay, with this particular name. This is hard coded. Now you want to go ahead and take some parameters externally, and then you can provide the name externally. You can provide the environment, like it's a production, it's a UAT, or it's a dev. After you get this, you go ahead and concatenate the value of both of them, which is the account name plus the environment name. Now we are going to concatenate both of them, and then use that variable value to create our storage account. How do I provide the value here? So I'm going to say square brackets, variables, and in the variable, I can say my storage account name. Okay, so that is how we kind of link all these things together. Guys, remember, at the very first go, this might sound a bit confusing, but please, if you have any doubts, go through the video, keep going through the video, and there you will understand. Go through the video, practice it yourself, create these ARM templates by hand. Start from the very basic, have the resource section, put in the basic things, hard code the values, just and then run your ARM templates. After that, create your parameters, create your variable, use the variable in the name section, so that you can just run this ARM template by providing the values externally. Okay, Sohail is saying, can you please draw and a diagram in the paint to explain this? So Sohail, I'm not sure how I can draw the diagram for this one. Let me just summarize this one. I'll just write down these points. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, in fact, let me write down. So how do you provide these things? Okay, so let's write it down. Steps. So what you do is, number one, you go ahead and create a storage account by only adding the resources section. Okay, so you only add the resource section, and then you run it via PowerShell, or whatever way you want to do it, you can do that. Okay, next thing is, you go ahead and what do you want to do? You want to remove the hard coding from the ARM template. For that purpose, what you need to do, so you're going to do the step number 3. You're going to create the parameters section, create parameters section, accept 2 parameters. Okay, you can say I only want to have one parameter, that's fine. What you want to do, accept 2 parameters. One is going to be the name of storage account. The second one is going to be the name of environment. Okay, why are we doing this? Because now you can use the same template to do deployment in multiple environments. Okay, so what I can do here is step number 4, create variable section. Okay, you guys can follow the same steps that will help you define your complete ARM template. Okay, so in the variable section, what you can do, create variable called my storage account. Okay, you can say my storage account name, and concatenate value of 2 parameters together. Okay, so you can concatenate the values of 2 parameters. Step number 5, refer the variable in the instead of hard coded storage account name. All right, so everybody clear how we can do all these steps and do the deployment? All right, now let me go here. Let me show you what the same steps we have done. We created, so we had a hard coded name here, right, in the name of the storage account. We went ahead and created 2 parameters. Okay, first parameter, the name of the storage account, second parameter, the name of the environment, and we have restricted the name of the environment to these 3 values. Okay, so I'm in the same ARM template, I'm trying to show you lots of different ways in which you can create your ARM templates. Okay, now after you create this, you go ahead and create a variable. Okay, in the variable, you can, now we are concatenating the value of parameter 1 and parameter 2. Okay, all right, so everybody clear? After we have created this variable, you go ahead and use the name property, and instead of hard coding the name, you use the variables and my storage account name. So whatever variable is there, the value of that will be replaced. Okay, all right, so this is how you can define your ARM template. Let me go ahead and run this one. Okay, let me clean up everything. I'm going to run the same ARM template, and then inside here, and I'm going to say enter. So whenever I do enter, it immediately figured out that there are 2 parameters which are there. Number 1 is the param underscore storage account name. Okay, so I can go ahead and say edu storage AC3, or let's call it edu storage, edu storage AC3. Now the next parameter, because it has a default value, it is not going to ask me for this. Okay, so I'm first of all, let me go ahead, in fact, let me remove this one, default value. Let me cancel all this. Let me clean up. Let me just run this command again. It is asking me the parameter name, storage account name. I'm going to write it edu storage AC3. Then it is asking me the parameter value for environment. I'll say dev here, okay, and I'm going to run it. Just keep an eye of what is the name that will be created. Just give it a second. It is checking if the template is valid. Yes, it is valid. It has started the deployment process. Another second, it should show up. Okay, just couple of more seconds. That should tell me that it has started the deployment of edu storage AC3 dev. Okay, now Juma is saying what concatenation the variable means. So Juma, I think now you can see here, we passed in the two parameter values called edu storage AC3 and parameter named and dev, or in fact the environment name as dev. It went ahead in the variable, I did the concatenation, which means I concatenated two very parameters together. Okay, so edu storage AC3 and dev, right? It went ahead and created a variable by concatenating both the values together. And once both the values were concatenated, a name, our name was created, and that name was used to do the deployment. Now you can see here the difference. There is no hard coding. I'm providing all this information into externally. What is the name I want? What is the environment I want? The same ARM template can be used. Now, this is what we did the deployment in dev. If I run the same command, I can say edu storage AC3, and then I can say environment name as prod. So this would mean now I can use the same ARM template to do the deployment in production. All right, make sense, Juma? And let's see, there are a few questions which are there. Okay, and Ashish is saying, is it possible to get the output data from the, no, I think that's already answered. And Shri is saying, if we create through portal, does it take default data types and lengths? So Shri, if we create it from, from the portal, by default, you are using the UI. So there is no, they have already seen, they already know what is the data type which are required for different properties. So you don't have to do, you don't have to worry about it. Okay. And Sohail, so you were asking about creating that in the, some paint, some diagram. I hope these steps have helped you, right? And Roshan is saying, I want to add underscore before environment in the variable. Okay, so Roshan, if you want to do it, now everybody see here, edu storage AC3 prod has been created. If I go back to the portal, let me close all of this. And if I'll go to my resource group and refresh it, now you can see there are two storage accounts with edu storage AC3 dev and edu storage AC3 prod. Okay, now Roshan was saying, can we add an underscore between both of them? First of all, it should support underscore. I'm not sure if it supports. Okay, so you cannot create a storage account with the name underscore. Okay, so that is why we cannot add an underscore. But if you want to do that in the ARM template for any other resource, you can say probably like this. Okay, so you are concatenating multiple things together in the name of your variable. Okay, all right, everybody fine? How we are creating using the ARM templates? And Natraj is saying, to create an ARM template we need to know JSON. Yes, Natraj, if you want to create this ARM templates manually, you need to know the JSON. Okay, and Roshan is saying how to write the comments in the template. Good point, Roshan. Let me see. Roshan, I'll just come back to this one. Maybe I think you can use the same format. Okay, I think this should work. All right, so I think this is how you can put in the comments in the JSON template. All right, so that's how it works. And so Sohail is saying how to link using the basic diagram. Sohail, I'm not sure what exactly is the question. If you can, elaborate more, we can discuss that. And Rajesh is saying, would this text file be shared to us? Yes, Rajesh, I'm going to share all this. I'm going to share the link with you in a few minutes, and then you can use that and download these same ARM templates. Okay. And Roshan is saying, do I need to install anything with Visual Studio to get IntelliSense? No, Roshan, you don't need to install anything with Visual Studio for this IntelliSense. Okay. And Juma is saying, okay, I think that's already answered. Roshan is saying how to pass the value in a variable. how to pass the value in a parameter that has default value. Okay, so guys, if you, let's say if I go ahead and put up the default value, now there are two ways in which you can pass the parameter values. Okay, first of all, you have seen that I just went ahead and ran the command. It asked me for the parameter, both the parameter values. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this for now, clean it up. Now, the other way to pass in the parameter is in the same command, what you are seeing here, new AZ resource group deployment. At the end, I can say, I can just put hyphen. It will automatically pick it up if there are any parameter values. Can you see here? Parameter storage account name and parameter environment. So I can say param storage account name, edu storage AC3. Then I'm going to provide the name of the parameter environment. Then I can go ahead and say dev. So this is how you can, another way of providing the parameters. I'm going to run it and this is the same stuff. All right. And Aziz is saying, so is PowerShell similar to Linux CLI and logging it was similar to SSH? Yes, Aziz, let me show you one more way. I know guys, we are just over time, 7 minutes, but if you can just hold back for maybe five more minutes, I'm going to show you, a couple of more things, then we can wrap up for the day. Okay, and if anybody has doubts regarding Azure subscription or if you have any other questions, so I'm here, I can answer that for you. Okay, Vijay is saying ARM templates to great resource group. Uh, okay, and okay, so Aziz, you were asking me about the Azure CLI. So what you can do, guys, so I have already put in the steps to install the Azure CLI. Now, if you want to use Azure CLI, so what I can do, I can go to my command prompt. Now, if you are working in the Linux environment, or if you are, even if you're on the Windows, you want to use the command prompt, so you can use something called as Azure CLI. Okay, so what kind of commands you can run here? Again, I can run a command here called az login. So this is going to help me connect to my Azure account. Okay, so you can run the commands in PowerShell, you can run the commands in CLI, or you can do the direct deployment through portal. Okay, so I'm going to select my subscription. I ran AZ login. So it is saying you have logged into Microsoft Azure. Okay, so I'm going to close this one. And if you see here in the command prompt, it is showing that I have logged in into my account and this is the subscription I have. Okay, in the same way, I can run a command here called, for example, AZ group deployment. Now I'm going to share this command with you. So you can, now this is the command to create, run my ARM template. Okay, AZ group deployment. Then I can specify create. Then I'm going to specify the resource group. Okay, so this is like a bash command you are running. So I can say edureka June 2019. Then I can provide the template file. Okay, so I'm going to say this is at D drive, demo files, first ARM template.json. Okay, exactly the same syntax that we were doing earlier. That's it. And I'm going to say mode as incremental. Then I can go ahead and run this particular ARM template. Okay, so Aziz, does that make sense? Looks like, let me see, what is the name of this ARM template? Let me just cross check. First ARM template.json, D drive demo files. Okay, I'm going to say D drive demo files, first ARM template.json. Okay, let's just cross check if it runs successfully. So it is again asking me the parameter name. So Aziz, does that make sense? Now you can, if you're sitting in the Linux environment, you can do the same activity. Okay, and Vijay is saying ARM templates to create ARM template to create the ARM template. Okay, I think some mix is there of the question. So Vijay, if you can just write it clearly, I can discuss that. And Sohail is saying, I am new to JSON and ARM templates. So Sohail, even if you are new to the ARM to the JSON ARM templates, of course you are new. If you are new to the JSON, it's not. It's a pretty simple format. Guys, if you are not, if you don't want to create all these things manually, of course you can go back to the portal. Okay, let me just give me a second. So if you can go back to the portal, and then you can go to the resource group, go to the deployments, and then you can see all the deployments that have taken place. You can go to the deployment, and from there you can pick up the template. Okay, so you don't have to manually create this, but the idea is that you understand how the ARM templates work. Okay, let me just summarize this in a bit. So what you are doing here, you have got schema and content version, then resources section where you can provide the information of the resources. In each and every resource, you can have to provide the type, which is the what type of resource you want to create. Then you provide the name of that resource, provide the location and the API version, and the additional properties of that resource. Okay, apart from that, if you want to remove the hard coding and if you want to take the parameters externally, you can go ahead and take the parameter values and you can specify some additional configuration for those parameters. Okay, now after you take the parameters, you can simply put in the parameter value here. Okay, I can even say parameters and I can take the value directly from the parameter. But what I'm trying to show you in the demo is I can use the parameter values, create a new variable by concatenating the information. Okay, once you concatenate this one, which means you join the values together, then you take the variable name and put that in your storage account name. Okay, so this is how you have removed the complete hard coding from your JSON template, ARM template, and this is the end of your ARM templates. Okay, so Shankar is saying how to provide the parameters in the command line itself without prompts. So Shankar, we have already seen. So if you don't want to provide the parameter values, you can, after the verbose or before the verbose also, you can say dash name of your parameter and the value of your parameter, then dash the name of the second parameter and the value of the parameter. Okay, and Rajesh is saying, so ARM templates are used for creating resources as well as deploy them. So Rajesh, creation and deployment means one and the same thing. So you use the ARM templates to do the deployment. Okay, and Vijay is saying ARM templates to create the resource group. No, Vijay, ARM templates cannot be used to create a resource group. Remember, whenever you are creating, you're running an ARM template, you have to provide the name of the resource group, right? Every time you are running the ARM template, you need to provide the name of the resource group. That is why ARM templates cannot be used to create the resource group. Okay, and Ashish is saying, can you show this Unix bash? So Ashish, I've just shown you the Azure CLI. So that is what you can deploy on the Linux machine, and then you can run the same commands. Okay, so you can see the commands here: az group deployment create resource group, and the name of the resource group, template file, mode as incremental, and then that will be the same stuff that we have done in the PowerShell. Okay, make sense, Sohail? And Ashish, you're asking about it. So is it clear to you? And Natraj is saying also this class video. So guys, this video will be available in the LMS, Edureka LMS after few hours. Okay. And Roshan is saying, can I use Visual Studio Code and get the intelligence? Yes, Roshan, you can do that. And Aziz is saying, so does the Azure CLI has different commands to Linux? No, Aziz, it is exactly the same. So whatever you are seeing here, it is exactly the same command. Okay, and Juma is saying, what is a different mode? Yes, Juma, that's the only thing left. And let me just see if there are any more questions. Sohail is saying, please explain the diagram to understand. So Sohail, I hope, I'm not sure, Sohail, what diagram probably I can draw here. So I've already mentioned all these things in the steps as well. And Robert is saying, in the test, what interface is expected, UI, PowerShell, or CLI? Great point, Robert. So if you are once you go for the certification, mostly the questions you will get is use the portal to create it, but sometimes they ask you to run the PowerShell and do the deployment. Okay, there is one more way. If I go to, for example, the Azure portal, okay, so in Azure portal there is something called as a command shell, cloud shell. Okay, so you can click on this cloud shell, and there you will have the option of running the PowerShell command or the bash command. Okay, so instead of installing it locally, you can you can click on this option called Cloud Shell. You can say PowerShell, and then you can go ahead and let me just see if I can use an existing storage account. I'm going to say East US. Let's see if any storage account is available. Just give me a second. So, okay, so I'm going to, you can create a new storage account. And once you create a storage account, you can simply go ahead, run your PowerShell or the bash commands right inside the portal. Okay, all right. So Robert, in the certification, you might have you mostly have to do it from the portal, but you can still get an option. You might be asked to run the command using the Cloud Shell. So if you understand the PowerShell commands, now you can run it straight inside the Azure portal. Okay, and Ashish is saying which property we can change and which property we cannot change. So Ashish, to know which properties you can change, you can go to the storage account. Okay, let me take you to the storage account, and then you will see the option of configuration. Let me open one of the storage accounts. On the left hand side, you will see an option of configuration. Whatever properties are showing up in configuration, that you can change, otherwise you cannot. Okay, and Juma is saying not able to access Azure using CLI or PowerShell. Juma, I'm not sure. So are you running these commands yourself right now? So please do not run it during the class. It will be difficult for me to as well. I will not be able to debug it. So you do your practice. And if you have any doubts, send out an email, or otherwise in the next class, I can help you out. Okay, make sense? And Vijay is saying it means resource group can be created through portal only. So Vijay, resource group can be created through portal. It can be created through PowerShell from Azure CLI or any other place, but not through ARM templates. Okay, and Abhijit is saying, can we have script to prompt the resource group name? Abhijit, if you want to prompt the resource group name, so then you have to build your own script. Okay, you'll have to write down your own PowerShell script that will put in the first of all that will create it, then you can pass it as a variable. So if I go to the PowerShell, now this is only writing the single command. You can write your complete PowerShell script, which will take first of all take the input as the resource group name, then put that in a variable, pass it to your command. Okay, Abhijit, does that make sense? So instead of writing this single command, I can write a whole PowerShell script that will take the resource group name, pass it as a store that in a variable, and then pass it to this deployment command. Okay. And Krishna is saying I don't see an option of JSON in Visual Studio. So guys, what you need to do, you need to go to File, New, File, and then search for JSON. Okay, normally this should be available to everyone. Okay, just search for it, you should see the JSON. Okay, and Raj Babu is saying in the entire session going forward is coding only or GUI as well. So Raj Babu, going forward, most of the times I would say 95% of the time it is all going to be via portal, not through the ARM templates. But the reason for showing you this is it is important for you to understand how these ARM templates work. Okay, in the exam you might get questions related to it, or when you are going practically and doing that in your projects, you will definitely be using ARM templates, not the UI. Okay, so that is why it is very important to understand the ARM template. But from demo, in fact from course perspective, I'm going to show you most of the things in the UI so that you understand what are the options which are available. Okay, if I'll straight away start using the code, you will get confused. That is why I showed you today as well first how to create a storage account via the UI, via portal. Then I showed you how to do it via ARM template. Okay, and Roshan is saying I still didn't get what is resource manager and resource manager API. Any example? So Roshan, we have just seen that resource. So whatever deployment we are doing right now using by running all these commands, it is actually calling the Azure Resource Manager. And because it is, we have installed the Azure module here, behind the scene, it is making a call to the Resource Manager API. If you want to see all the Resource Manager APIs, so you can just search for Azure Resource Manager APIs, and it will tell you that if you want to programmatically do it, how you can do that. Okay, deploy resources with REST API. So instead of you can create ARM templates, make a call to the resource manager via PowerShell commands, or if you want to do it programmatically, again create the ARM templates and make a direct call to the REST API. So can you see this one? I hope this will give you an example. So you can say, to create a deploy a resource group, say put command and make a direct call to these APIs, provide the name of the resource group, and you can do that. And if you want to deploy, for example, something else like uh, this information, you can run this particular PowerShell command. You can run this REST APIs and make a direct call. Okay, so if you, in the same way, if you want to deploy, let's say, storage account, you can create this kind of ARM template. Then you can run this kind of the REST API saying, make a call to management.azure.com/subscriptions, ID of your subscription, put the name of your resource group, and then you can simply make a call. Okay, so does that make sense, Roshan? And Jeevan is saying PowerShell and Azure portal, the commands will be the same. Uh, Jeevan, the in the Azure portal, you do not have to put in any commands, but of course, behind the scene, both of them are passing the JSON template to the Azure Resource Manager. Okay. And Sagar is saying Azure Cloud PowerShell command and local PowerShell command and syntax are the same, right? Yes, if you are using the cloud shell, or if you are using the local PowerShell, or if you are using, for example, bash command in the cloud shell, or if you're running from Linux bash commands, both of them are the same. Okay. And Roshan is saying to create resource group from PowerShell. Roshan, yes, I see the link. So guys, you can create the resource group from the PowerShell, but you cannot create resource group via ARM templates. Okay, and Natraj is saying, hi, Azure does the messaging system like TIBCO and Kafka, or web server like Apache. I think Natraj, we are going slightly, more into details, but just hold on to that one. When we'll go to, all these different further classes, we are going to get into more complex things, and there I'll show you, how you can provision more stuff. Okay, and Rajesh is saying, can you share details on the Azure subscription account? And yes, Rajesh, just give me a second. And Roshan is saying, so PowerShell is internally calling REST API. Yes, Roshan, PowerShell SDK is installed. Azure SDK is installed. When you run this command behind the scene, because it is it's a SDK command. Behind the scene, it calls a REST API, and whenever you call the REST API, you pass the JSON template. That JSON template gets deployed. Okay. All right, so Prashant is saying, so can we use Postman to create resource groups and resources? Yes, Prashant, you can do that. Okay, so you can go ahead and make a direct Postman call. You can use curl or whatever you want. You can directly call the APIs. You have now seen the APIs as well. Okay, so you can simply use the REST APIs. So can you see, guys, see here, you can deploy the template via portal. You can deploy it via CLI. You can deploy it via PowerShell. You can deploy it via REST API. So, or if you want to deploy it via code, you can do that as well. Okay, so that is how you can, deploy the ARM templates in a number of ways. Okay, Prashant, does that answer your question? Okay, so guys, that's all I see in the questions. And Natraj is saying how different is from API. So uh, Natraj is saying, can you please define REST API? Natraj, that is something out of scope of this discussion. But you're saying how is different from the API? So API and REST API is, there is a slight difference in the architecture. So REST API, you can just call it by, it's a pretty simple way of defining the APIs, the REST structure. So you can go ahead and make a call like this to the REST API. Okay, so I would not be able to go into the details right now because that's out of the scope completely. Okay, and Roshan is saying, you mentioned resource group cannot be created via ARM template, but this website gives an ARM template to create the resource group. Roshan, maybe I can have a look at that. Thank you for pointing it out. But according to me, I don't think that ARM templates, resource groups can be created via ARM template, but maybe if something is there, something new, maybe we can, of course, I can check. So thank you for pointing it out. I'll just, we can cross check that as well. But before, people go, couple of things I want to tell you. Number one is, uh, guys, did you like today's session? Did you guys enjoyed, the number of things that we have discussed? We started very slow, but we have went into a lot of different concepts, and we have looked into how you can do the deployment. From the next class, I'm going to give you a lot of services, a lot of different information. Then again, please go ahead and practice. So whatever questions are there, I hope I have not missed any single question. If there is something, of course you can bring it up. Couple of things I'm going to share with you guys one link where I'm going to put these ARM templates. I'm going to put in the commands and everything. So I'm just putting that on the chat window. I hope everybody receives it. Please try to open it right now and see if you can see the details of the first thing, the first, I've just have a zip file there. So that contains all the ARM templates, that contains the commands, that contains the setup instructions, and you can download and please practice. Okay, only 6-7 people saying yes, they like the class, rest all. Okay, so okay, that's the first thing. Next thing is my mail ID. So if you have something for me to stuff, let me share my email ID with you guys. Okay, I'm just going to send my email ID to everyone. Guys, if you have any questions, uh, please feel free to send out an email. I'm going to answer that. I know that we are half an hour above, but I hope that's worth it. Okay, so we are discussing things, and I hope you like the stuff. So doubts during the week, even after the course ends. Somebody saying phone number, sorry, no phone numbers. So even if after the course ends, if you have any doubts, drop me an email. People who have been there in my sessions, they know that I always respond back. It might take 2-3 days, 4 days, 5 days sometimes, but I always respond back. Okay, Sagar is saying, are you going to upload these into LMS? No, Sagar, sometimes people do face problem there. So what I've done, I have given this link. Every day, every class, I'm going to put everything in this folder. You can simply go ahead and download. Okay, and Dinesh is saying, what is the assignment for tomorrow? Dinesh, the assignment, basically, I wanted to keep it light. Please go ahead and practice what we have done today. Create your subscription, uh, create the ARM templates by hand. First of all, do the deployment from portal. Once you are fine, create these ARM templates by hand. Do the deployments via PowerShell commands. Do the deployment via CLI. So that go ahead, and start practicing all these stuff. Very, very important. Okay, and Ashish is saying, can you share the PPT? So Ashish, that only has this diagram. Once you will get the video, just go ahead and scrap it from the video. Okay, just take a screenshot, and that should be. So some Sagar is saying can't open the link, not clickable. Sagar, probably you haven't copied it correctly. Somebody is able to open that. So just try it again. Just look at the complete URL. Okay, last thing about the, yeah, people saying it is working. Last two things. First thing is about the feedback. If you guys like the stuff, you can go to the Edureka LMS and you can provide the feedback. Once you go to the LMS, you will see the class schedule. You click on the class schedule and you will see the first class. You can go and provide the feedback if you like my stuff. And if you think that something needs to be improved, if you'll put it there, that will come later to me, not immediately. So better you send out an email to me directly. If you want some changes or some questions you have, you can put it there. Don't put any questions there. That's nobody sees that. So that's only a feedback for me that comes later. So better you drop me an email, but please do provide the feedback if you like the instructor, about the content and stuff. And last thing is the Azure subscription. So what you need to do, you can go to Azure free trial, search for Azure free trial, create your Azure free account today, and then you can go ahead and say start the free, and you can sign up, and then you will get $200, I think 200 or $150 for 1 month. That is good enough. Remember, after you are done creating, done working with your resources, please go ahead and delete your resource group. Okay, don't. Now today it is all fine because it is only storage account. You don't pay for storage account until and unless you store there. But otherwise, once you will, from tomorrow, once we'll create virtual machines, then if you will not delete your storage accounts, or in fact, once you will not delete your resource group, you are going to pay for it. And then, you will say that my free trial has expired before time. Okay, so please go ahead and delete the resource group as soon as you are done with your daily practice. Okay, then go ahead and delete it. Okay, so that's all I have for today. Thank you so much. Wonderful class. I'm going to answer a few questions which are there, but thank you so much. It's a wonderful class, lots of questions. You need to reduce some questions, guys. It's when you have too many questions, we might miss few things, but I don't want to do that. So thank you. Great class. And Rajesh is saying, is it 12 months free? So Rajesh, first month is $150, totally 150 or $200, totally free of cost. Use $200 way you want. After after first month, then you can search here like free, and there are some free services which are available for complete 1 year, but you have to within the limits. So you can get 750 hours of compute of virtual machine of this instance type. Okay, in the same way, if you're looking for storage account, you can have 5 GB of LRS. Now once we'll talk about it. So 5 GB of LRS will be free after 1 year. Oh, sorry, after 1 month up to 12 months. So the next 11 months you are going to get 5 GB storage free of cost. Okay, makes sense? So we'll talk, if your subscription is expiring, then still you can use it. But even if it is totally expired, do not worry, it is very cheap. Okay, you don't have to worry about it. Once you do, create few things, and after practice, after let's say 3-4 hours you practice and you delete it, so you don't have to worry, because you're not still not going to be charged much. Maybe 200 rupees if you're coming from US, maybe $5, $5-6 throughout for the month. Okay, so $5-6 for a month is nothing. Maybe you'll spend $20 for a month, that's nothing, right? So that should be okay, but that will help you do a lot of practice. But if you have free trial, you have $200, go ahead and do it. Okay, and Vijay is saying issue we encounter in real work environment. So Vijay, if you have any questions related to challenges with your office environment, if you're working on a project, if you have some doubts, if you're working on Azure, drop me an email, I'll help you out. Okay, and let's see if Krishna is saying thanks Mohit, was really good. So thank you Krishna. And Dinesh is saying thank you Dinesh. And Prashant, you're saying what happens after 1 month? I think that's already answered. So if you are creating free, using these free services, that's fine. After that, you will be paying for it. Okay. Let's see if there is something else. Sohail is saying good class. So Bhavani is saying thank you. So guys, thank you. Natraj is saying thanks Mohit. So thank you guys. And Sagar is saying, what if I use my credit cards to create a subscription? You have to provide your credit card, but then you will not be charged for 1 month. After 1 month, you now know what happens. Okay. And one person is asking, is passing AZ300 without AZ301 good enough to call oneself MS Azure certified cloud architect? So if you only pass AZ300, you're not going to get the architect certification. So please, 301 you should also pass. But guys, remember, certification is all good. Okay, but practically what I'm going to show you, in the next classes, it is going to be very, very practical. So I'm going to, I want to make sure that you learn about Azure more. But as far as your question is concerned, 301 you should also try to pass it. Without that, you can call yourself as an MCP, but of course not an architect. Okay, because you're not going to get a certification for that. Okay. Vijay is saying provide more practical examples or exercises. So Vijay, we are going to do that. This is when in today's class as well, when we say uh, how to, nobody will tell you, they'll not come you and tell you that you create multiple parameters, do the concatenation so that you can deploy the same name, same storage account name in different environments. So this is like actually a practical example which I have faced as well. Okay, so when they tell you, create a storage account, I could have simply told you that create a parameter and that's it, pass in the parameter. That becomes, you're removing the hard coding. But when I tell you that create two parameters and then try to pass in an environment variable, now you can see this is more oriented towards practical, right? I hope this is, this will help you out. So guys, a lot of people writing good comments. So guys, thank you so much. Let me know if I missed any question. A lot of people asking few things. Okay. Natraj is saying, how long will it take to learn JSON? Natraj, totally up to you. It's not a difficult thing to learn. Even I don't know too much about JSON, but I think this is something easy to understand, right? You don't have to fully sit down and learn about JSON. Okay. Shankar is saying, thanks, really good discussion and interactive class. So thank you, Shankar. And Roshan is saying, can I give AZ301 before 300? Roshan, yes. You can do it in any order. Okay. And Ashish is saying, can you share the dumps? Ashish, I've just shared that on the link I've shared in the chat window. If you're not, anybody having any problem, drop me an email. I'll reshare that. Okay. And Sagar is saying, Sohail is saying, easy to get lost. Please draw small diagram what we're trying to explain. So Sohail, from the next classes, tomorrow you'll see it will be all based on the diagram. But today I do not, I didn't see a need for drawing a diagram. But maybe from tomorrow you'll see that that whole class will be based on the diagram. Okay. So I'll take your feedback. From next class we'll try to add more stuff there. Sagar is saying was a nice class, so thank you, Sagar. And Abhijit is saying thanks, Mohit, good start. Thank you, Abhijit. And Roshan is saying, Sesh is saying, is this course covers both 300, 301? No, Sesh, it only covers 300. 301, I'm not the one who is very focused only on the certification. So I'll keep telling you how do you architect your things. So whatever you will get pointers from me, whatever based on my experience, I'll just share it across with you. Of course, that is not geared towards AZ301, but without understanding how do you architect, what is the use of having a service? So during all the classes, I'll keep telling you where should you use it, how should you use it. Okay. And Ashish is saying sample questions for certification. So Ashish, you will get some from Edureka. I think some 50, 60 questions, but I do not have, I'll keep telling you, giving you pointers, what kind of questions you might be asked, but I do not have any dump of sample questions. Okay. And one person is saying, thank you, very practical and hands-on. So guys, thank you. Juma, I know mode is left. We'll see, we'll get some time. I'll tell you what is a mode. Okay. But today I think we have just ran out of time. And let's see. Venkat is saying, do course for AZ301? No, Venkat, I'm kind of constrained with the time, so I don't do it for 301. I'm not sure if 301 has, Edureka doesn't have 301, but anyways, if that comes up and if I'll get some time, I'll do 301 as well. Obviously, if you like my stuff. Okay, so and Natraj is saying, is there a community where some discussion happens on daily basis? No, Natraj, not yet. Maybe at the, I'm not sure. I'll just check with the support team, probably, but there is no discussion forum as such. Okay. So Sesh is saying, thank you. Good informative session. So thank you, Sesh. Okay. So that's, I see the end of the questions. What were there? Everything I've tried to cover. And Roshan again has a question from where I can get sample lab questions. Roshan, too early. Just hold on. For certification, just hold on. I'll keep giving you pointers where you can, get the lab information. Okay, just hold on. We'll come back here. We'll see. Today's class, please go back and practice the ARM templates. Once you practice that, get used to it in a day. Next day, I'll give you more pointers where you can do the practice. Okay, so Juma is saying thank you. It was a great start. So thank you, Juma. Roshan, is it okay? So guys, thank you so much, and we'll connect tomorrow and discuss more stuff. Thank you, and please practice. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, so thank you and bye-bye. Thank you, Roshan.